Chapter 255. Never in her wildest dreams did Dunya expect that there would be such a strange mechanism on the wall. This was clearly the interior of a modern company. But why was it like the legendary ninja's room? Pressing the wall with one's hand would cause one to flip over. At this time, Dunya was about to turn around and say to Ryuto and the others, "Come and see what's going on here." But before she could say anything, she had already fallen in. She couldn't react at all. What the hell is this? The moment she fell in, the originally flipped wall immediately closed from the inside. Dunya's body slid down like a slide. When she was sliding down, Dunya instinctively reached out and grabbed the wall next to her, trying to stop herself from sliding down. But the wall next to her was slippery. There was no point to stop her falling. Whoosh! Just like this, the girl was like playing on a slide in the park. She quickly slid down from this secret passage until she fell on a soft cushion. After Dunya completely disappeared, Ryuto and the others also realized that the little princess actually disappeared while walking. Dunya, where is she? Suddenly, Ryuto glanced around in confusion and frowned slightly. Because Dunya was walking at the back of the team, Ryuto didn't keep an eye on her situation. Just now, everyone only heard a slight mechanical sound. Then the girl suddenly disappeared. Ichiya and the other three also quickly walked back and searched on the wall where Dunya disappeared. There seems to be a secret passage here. The young mistress must have fallen into it. It seems to lead to some underground space. After knocking on the wall, Jiro knocked out an obvious hollow movement from one of the walls. It also solved the mystery of Dunya's sudden disappearance. There was a special mark on the map that the florist got before. There seemed to be an underground building under this company. It should be the nest of the Tianmu Group, pharmaceutical department for some illegal research. Because of this, it seemed that there were many secret doors in this building. The secret door that could directly lead to the underground building from the building on the ground could make it convenient for the group of researchers to come and go at any time. Then let's follow the secret passage. In theory, we should be able to catch up soon. Originally, Jiro wanted to say, "We should be able to catch up with Miss Dunya soon." But before he finished his words, there was a sudden loud alarm around them. Beep beep, beep beep, beep beep, beep beep. Not sure if it was because of Dunya's movement or because the group of five stayed here for too long. In short, the surrounding alarms suddenly sounded. There was also a burst of chaotic footsteps in the corridor not far away. At this moment, Jiro hurriedly pushed the wall, but the wall did not move. It seemed to be designed to lock from the inside if an accident happened. Well, now we are in big trouble, Humph. Looking at the group of armed guards rushing out of the corner not far away, Yamanichi couldn't help but snort coldly. In that case, let's just kill them. After all, they are in the basement. Kacha. Speaking of this, Jiro took out his dual submachine gun from his trench coat. Ichi also took out his dual battle axe, and Sengo carried a small rocket launcher on his shoulder. Although the Amon family's stealth skills are indeed very professional, this is not their favorite assassination method. Like Ryuto, the best assassination method of these three top assassins is to break in openly and kill all the enemies in sight. Dunya, don't let anything happen to you, or I will have to kill myself and start all over again. Just as Ryuto and the three Amon brothers rushed into the group of armed guards and started killing, he was thinking about Dunya's current situation. But for Dunya, her situation wasn't that bad. At the very least, it was much better than Long Do's situation. She didn't have to be pointed at by hundreds of people. After Dunya landed on the other side of the chute, her body fell on a soft cushion, and then a small dark room appeared in front of her. What the hell is this place? Dunya looked up and saw that the chute she fell on has already closed. Obviously, it is impossible for her to go back the way she came. In desperation, she could only walk towards the door at the end of the small room and carefully open the door. After opening the door, Dunya saw several narrow corridors. In front, left, and right there are a total of 3 paths. The end of each path is dark, just like the underground tunnel Dunya went through before. At this time men on the left and women on the right, loli in the middle. Thinking that she is still a loli, Dunya walked towards the middle path with her head held high. Although she doesn't know where this place is, since it is the enemy's nest, she has to walk out with her imposing manner. However, at the end of this underground tunnel, in the large underground research room, a researcher in a white coat was hurriedly pushing open the door in the depths of the research room. "What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry?" When the researcher quickly pushed the door open and walked in, the head of the pharmaceutical department of the Heavenly Eye Group, Hades, who was originally looking at the information in front of the computer, raised his head and looked at one of the researchers in the underground base with a dissatisfied gaze. Yomi is a middle-aged man with light yellow pupils like a snake. Due to overthinking, the hair on the top of his head has long fallen out. However, the hair around his head is still there. At first glance, it looks like a chicken's nest on his head. However, the reason why he was thinking was not because of his duty as a researcher to think about how to save people. Instead, he was thinking about how to break through the limits of trash like humans. Many years ago, Yomi was once a famous professor, a big shot in the field of biopharmaceutical engineering, that was considered worthy of the Nobel Prize. However, for some reason one day, he suddenly abandoned everything. He left behind a letter and disappeared without a trace. He never appeared in front of the public again. And in the letter that Yomi left behind she wrote, "I've learned one thing in my short life. The more I study science, the more I'll discover that there's a limit to human abilities, unless I surpass human abilities." It was a sentence filled with deep meaning. Of course, no one knew that the reason why Huang Quan left the medical world was because he met a woman. He met a woman who had the same vision as him. She believed that humans were as weak as trash, and she hoped that she could make humans stand up. Just like that, under IM's invitation, Yomi became the head of the pharmaceutical department of the Tianmu Group. Over the years, he used his top-notch ability in biopharmaceutical engineering to make countless superhuman drugs. As for the Hell Butterfly, that was developed not long ago, it was a relatively successful batch of drugs. It was also a batch that Yomi was slightly satisfied with. However, tonight, Yomi's office was suddenly pushed open by a researcher. That person said in a panicked tone, "Lord Yomi, not good, there are intruders." "Intruders? If there are intruders, just arrange for the guards to deal with them. Why are you panicking?" Although he was usually only responsible for research and didn't care much about other trivial matters, Yomi also knew that there were hundreds of guards in the Yingjili Pharmaceutical Company. Although these staff members looked like ordinary guards on the surface, they were actually well-trained mercenaries. Their combat strength was so strong that it wouldn't be a problem to send them to the battlefield in the Middle East. No matter how many ordinary invaders there were, it would be suicide. Unexpectedly, the researcher swallowed a mouthful of saliva and reported in an awkward tone, "Lord Nether, that the guards can't stop them at all. Those people are about to reach the basement." What? The moment he heard this, the chicken coop on Yomi's head almost stood up. "Are you kidding me? What are the guards doing? They can't even stop a few people? Those intruders look like monsters. They're there. What are they doing? They are chasing after our guards and beating them up. Our people have been completely defeated. They have begun a frantic and disorderly retreat." When he mentioned the scene he saw from the surveillance camera, the researcher's face was a little pale. "Am I dreaming? Forget it, let's leave first." Hearing this, the corner of Huang Quan's mouth twitched slightly, but she still quickly sighed and stood up, preparing to run. No, this was not running, it was a strategic retreat. In the case of an enemy invasion, Yomi, as the head of the Heavenly Eye Group's pharmaceutical department, naturally couldn't fight the enemy here. After all, he was a researcher and couldn't even trust a chicken. Just as Yomi packed up and was about to run, the researcher continued to ask, "What about the things in the base that can't be taken away? Prepare to activate the emergency blasting device and blow up the whole place." Emergency blasting? Blasting? But there are still a lot of guards alive up there. The most important thing is that the research data and instruments here can't be leaked to the intruders. As for those guys, if they die, then they die. They can be buried with the intruders. Speaking up to this point, Huang Quan sneered, and took out a glass bottle the size of a mineral water from a special safe under the table. The most important thing in this base was the Hell Butterfly original solution in this ice crystal glass bottle. So far, all the Hell Butterfly made into anesthetic were made from this bottle of original solution after diluting it hundreds of thousands of times. This kind of original solution was very troublesome to preserve. It had to be placed in a special bottle to not lose its efficacy. But that special bottle was very fragile, so it usually had to be locked in a special safe. But as long as this bottle was fine, then Yomi could make as many Hell Butterflies as he wanted. That's right, as long as this bottle was fine. Boom! But just as he picked up the glass bottle and was about to put it in the storage box, the office door was kicked open with a loud bang. Then, a white petite figure pounced on Yomi like lightning. Bang! Then, with a crisp explosion, Yomi was pressed on the table, and the bottle in his hand fell to the ground. The liquid inside flowed all over the floor. Chapter 256. What? The speed at which the small white figure rushed in was simply too fast. Before Yomi could react, a seemingly slender hand that contained immense power had already pressed him onto the table. The little person who suddenly rushed in and pressed the head of the pharmaceutical department of the Heavenly Eye Group onto the table was naturally Dunia, who had taken a detour not long ago. Although her brain wasn't very good, her intuition was surprisingly good. After circling around the complex underground research institute for a while and knocking out a few researchers, the girl accidentally arrived in front of this office. Moreover, when she put her ear to the door to see if there was anyone inside, Dunia heard the two people inside saying that they were going to blow up the entire place. It could be said that fortune favors fools. What a joke! How could this be? Ryudo and the three Amon brothers were still above. If the entire building was blown up, wouldn't the four of them turn into mud? Therefore, Dunia didn't hesitate to act. She kicked open the door in a way that Colored Glaze couldn't be more envious of, and then rushed towards Yellow Springs as fast as she could, and pressed the old man down on the table. After succeeding, Dunia couldn't help but ridicule. Old man, what did you just say? You want to blow up this place? Are you? But at this time, not far away, the white-robed researcher who was so scared that he fell to the ground looked at the bottle on the ground and shouted hysterically. Yellow Springs, who was pressed down on the table by Dunia, also looked at the broken glass bottle on the ground and shouted, You! Do you know what you have done? Logically speaking, Yellow Springs should be held hostage by this little intruder. But he didn't even look at Dunia, and instead looked at the broken glass bottle on the ground with eyes that were about to pop out of their sockets. Within the broken glass bottle, the red liquid was slowly flowing on the ground, and it was evaporating at a speed visible to the naked eye. A strange crimson mist rose from the ground. Suddenly, a strange smell filled the office. How should this smell be described? Just like asphalt mixed with paint and glycerin. This liquid was then heated up to make it rise, causing the mist to rush into people's noses like sharp swords. Dunia also smelled the strange smell coming from the ground, and she hurriedly covered her mouth with one hand, while the other hand pressed down on Yellow Springs firmly and shouted, What the hell is this? Why is the smell so pungent? Let me go. This is the liquid of the Hell Butterfly. One drop is enough to kill a person, and it can be absorbed by breathing the air. If we stay here, we will all turn into monsters. Although Huang Quan's strength was no match for Dunia's monstrous strength, the old man still struggled desperately to get up from the table and escape. After all, as the instigator of the Hell Butterfly, Yellow Springs knew very well how amazing the effect of the liquid was. Recently, they deliberately circulated the Hell Butterfly to collect information, but it was just a paper anesthetic made from diluted liquid that was hundreds of thousands of times diluted, but it was enough to kill after consuming it. And now, the liquid that was spilled in the office was the real deal, and it wasn't diluted at all. If a person breathed in a few mouthfuls, what kind of monster would they turn into? Even Yellow Springs couldn't imagine it. But when she heard Yellow Springs' words, Dunia sneered. Rotten old man, do you think I'm an idiot? How can a few mouthfuls turn a person into a monster in this world? Whoa, 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 whoa. Before Dunia finished speaking, the researcher in the white coat let out a beast-like scream, and then the red muscles all over his body swelled. It directly burst the white coat that originally fit him. At the same time, the man's eyes flickered with a red light, and his expression became incomparably ferocious. Under the contrast of the red mist around him, he looked like a demon from hell. Sorry, it seems like there really is one. The moment she reacted, Dunia stared blankly at the special glass bottle that fell on the ground, and then felt her scalp go numb, and her body flew out of the office. Run! 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 Run quickly, or else you'll turn into a monster. After rushing out of the office door, Dunia could still hear the terrifying roar of the mutated researcher inside, and it scared her so much that her face turned green. But no matter how fast Dunia ran, it couldn't change the fact that she had already inhaled the liquid of the hell butterfly, and even felt a strange restlessness in her body. That feeling was like a spark, and a spark was burning fiercely in the girl's body. Although it wasn't particularly obvious yet, this spark would sooner or later become a raging fire, and not even ashes would be left. So Dunia ran as fast as a loli while shouting at Yomi, who was in her hand. Hey, you're the one who researched that thing, right? Where's the antidote? Where's the antidote? Yomi also inhaled the liquid of the hell butterfly at this time, so he actually wanted to say the same thing. The head of the pharmaceutical department hurriedly replied, Go straight ahead and turn left. There's a research room. Some hell butterfly's antidote is stored there. Quick, quick, quick. Speaking of which, Dunia and Yomi actually inhaled more of the hell butterfly liquid than the researcher just now. But the former's physique was special, and the latter's body had many special antibodies, so the time of the outbreak was delayed. But without the antidote, the two of them would still turn into monsters sooner or later. This was without a doubt. It was a race against time. Whether it was Dunia or Yomi, it was really a race against time now. The girl's petite figure quickly shuttled through the underground tunnel, and immediately came to a research room not far away according to Yomi's instructions. So cold. The moment they entered, a bone-piercing chill came from inside, and almost froze the sweat on Dunia's face. This research room was specially used to store some low-temperature drugs and materials, and usually, one would need to wear a special protective suit to enter, but the two of them obviously couldn't care less now. Put me down. Go break the glass and take out those light blue bottles of antidote. I'm going to start the injection. TSK. Although she didn't want to listen to the orders of this messy head, Dunia still threw him to the side of the table, and rushed to the wall cabinet, broke the glass with a punch, and took out the light blue antidote inside. Behind them, Yellow Spring quickly took out 2 syringes from the cabinet. She took the antivenom from Dunia, and loaded it into the syringes. Then, she inserted the syringes into the arms of the 2 people at the same time. It wasn't that Yomi really wanted to inject the antidote into Dunia, but he knew that if he didn't do so, he would definitely be killed on the spot by this violent girl. So he had no choice but to do it. Seeing the light blue antidote slowly injected into her body, Dunia couldn't help but ask, Is this safe? Won't I turn into a monster? I don't know. But Yomi shook his head, and said with an uncertain tone, What do you mean? The poison that you made, the antidote that you made, you said you don't know? Suddenly, Dunia couldn't help but grab Yomi's hair, and almost pulled out his messy hair. I don't know. Hell's butterfly is still in the experimental stage, and this antidote is a newly developed product. It hasn't even gone through clinical trials. Who knows what will happen after it's injected? You're giving us this stuff to inject? What else can we do? Wait for death. Yomi couldn't help but clench his teeth, and said angrily, If you didn't break the glass bottle of antidote, we wouldn't have fallen to this state. You still have the nerve to say that. If you didn't make this broken medicine, I wouldn't. Ugh. Maybe it was the effect of the hell's butterfly, or maybe it was the antidote that was injected into her. Originally, Dunia was going to slap Huang Quan, but who would have thought that she would suddenly feel dizzy, and then she fainted in a daze. While unconscious, She felt like her body was repeatedly soaked in a hot spring and an ice pool. Extreme heat and extreme cold washed over every corner of the room. This kind of feeling was not too comfortable. And no matter how hard one tried, they could not sleep soundly. Sway, sway, sway. When Dunya woke up from her coma, she vaguely felt that she seemed to be gently shaking, and there was a warm touch and familiar smell in front of her body, giving her a strong sense of security. This smell is Ryudo? She slowly opened her eyes and saw a familiar head in front of her, and the surrounding scenery had turned into a familiar courtyard. It looked like the courtyard in the Rulon Group headquarters. Oh, Dunya, you're finally awake. After sensing that the girl behind him woke up, Ryudo turned around and asked with a smile. What's going on? I want to ask you what's going on. What happened in the underground base? Why did you faint on the ground? For Dunya, she didn't know what happened after she fainted, and Ryudo knew more than her. Just as Long Do and the 3 Amon brothers killed and chased away the guards, Long Do and the other 2 Amon brothers were still alive. The 4 of them quickly found the entrance to the underground research base and split up to look for Dunya. Fortunately, Ryudo followed the faint smell of vodka on Dunya's body, and it didn't take long to find her in the cold research room. However, Ryudo didn't see Yomi in the research room. It seems that Yomi quickly slipped away when Dunya fainted. Chapter 257. However, Ryudo was too lazy to care about Acheron's business. After all, he didn't know that Acheron was here. Instead, he hurriedly carried the unconscious Dunya out of the room. When he rescued Dunya, Ryudo also checked her body and didn't find anything wrong with her. She was just a little cold after being in the freezer for a short period of time. Therefore, he didn't choose to commit suicide to save her. After all, committing suicide for no reason was too stupid. Unless there was no other choice, there was no need to do so. As for the 3 Amen brothers, they found a lot of anesthetic in the underground research facility that hadn't been transported out yet, as well as a large monster that was full of hell butterflies. What the hell is that? When Amen saw the monster smashing around Acheron's office across the corridor, he also showed a puzzled expression. I don't know. Let's leave first. This place doesn't seem right. Because they didn't know what kind of monster was hiding in this research facility, the 3 Amen brothers didn't continue to search after meeting up with Long Do. Instead, they directly buried a bomb and blew up the research facility along with the monster. Boom! With a loud explosion, the Yingjili Pharmaceutical Company in the suburbs became history, and countless crimes were buried under a large pile of debris. After the 5 of them successfully evacuated, the source of anesthetic in the underground market was completely cut off. Now they only needed to seize the remaining batch. That was the job of the flower merchant. And it didn't have much to do with Ryudo. You can rest here tonight. I'll call your father. After explaining what happened, Ryudo carried Dunya to the guest room and gently put her down on the bed, letting her have a good night's rest. Although he didn't know what happened, from Dunya's expression, she seemed to be a little tired, and her expression was very complicated. She should have a good rest. However, just as Ryudo was about to put the girl down and let her rest, Dunya reached out and grabbed his wrist. Actually, under the dim light, Dunya stuttered as if she wanted to say something, but she didn't know what to say. Although Ryudo didn't know what happened before, Dunya remembered it clearly. She was infected by the hell butterfly. And although she was injected with the antivenom, there was still no guarantee that she wouldn't mutate. After waking up, Dunya felt that the strange restlessness in her body was gone. But even so, she couldn't be sure that she was fine. Therefore, she was in a dilemma. On one hand, Dunya wanted to tell Ryudo what happened to her. But on the other hand, she was afraid to tell anyone. She was even afraid that Ryudo look at her like a monster. Naturally, Long Do noticed her bashful attitude. So, he asked, "Concerns, is there anything? There's something. If let's go see a doctor." Well, seeing a doctor may not help. Then you have to tell me exactly what happened. Hurry up, don't drag it out. Ugh, okay. After swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Dunya said in a trembling voice, "Actually, I seem to have inhaled something strange." The old man in the white coat said, "It's the hell butterfly's liquid, and after inhaling it, I'll become a monster." What? When he heard Dunya's words, Ryudo was stunned for a second, then he bounced up from the ground. It was obvious how excited he was. Is there a mistake? Dunya inhaled the hell butterfly. Ryudo didn't know what the so-called liquid was, but from the name, it should be a drug used to make the hell butterfly. The effect was definitely much stronger than a simple anesthetic. And Dunya actually inhaled that thing? Doesn't that mean she'll become a monster? That's not right. When he thought of this, Ryudo was very excited, but he immediately glanced at Dunya and immediately realized that something seemed to be wrong. Logically speaking, after a human consumed the hell butterfly, there should be a quick change. Previously, Pang Saburo and Park In-young were the same, and they quickly turned into monsters that were neither human nor ghost. But since Dunya was carried out by Ryudo from the underground base, it has been at least an hour, but her body didn't change at all. Just when Ryudo thought that Dunya's body didn't change at all, he reacted by activating the rogue's analysis mirror to look at the girl, and then he showed an extremely surprised expression. Before this, if Ryudo remembered correctly, Dunya's attributes were name, Saitu Dunya, age, 15 years old, attributes, wisdom LV1, physique LV4, courage LV3, insight LV3, charm LV2, but at this moment, her attributes became like this. Name, Saitu Dunya, age, 15 years old, attributes, wisdom LV1, physique LV5, courage LV3, insight LV3, charm LV2. What's going on? Did she take the wrong medicine? Without any changes in other attributes, Dunya's physical ability actually reached the level of LV5 physique. Extreme Superman? What does this mean? After swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Ryudo reached out and held Dunya's hand and said seriously, "Try to hold my hand with all your strength. You must use all your strength." Huh? Use all my strength? Forget it, I'll just hold it. It can't hurt him anyway. Dunya knew that Ryudo's strength was even stronger than her, so she immediately tightened her right hand with all her strength. At that moment, Ryudo only felt that the small palm was like an iron clamp that firmly clamped his hand. Severe pain accompanied by the sound of bones creaking came together. So Ryudo quickly stopped Dunya's violence before his hand bones were broken by her. What kind of strength is this? LV5 physique, Extreme Superman, is actually so terrifying. After the two hands released, Ryudo shook his palms that were a little blue and explained to Dunya the abnormal state of her body. Not only I'm fine, but my physical fitness is also strengthened? After listening to Ryudo's explanation, Dunya couldn't help but open her mouth wide, with a look of disbelief. The reason for such a strange situation, at least with Ryudo and Dunya's poor knowledge, it was impossible to give a normal explanation. For this situation, they could only conclude that the hell butterfly was originally a potion that strengthened the body's ability. After Dunya overdosed, she was quickly injected with the anti-poison serum, and even laid in the cold storage for a while. Plus, she already had a superhuman physical fitness. These purely coincidental factors mixed together seemed to have achieved some unexpected results. It seemed to have allowed the girl to retain part of the hell butterfly's strengthened state, and at the same time, there were no obvious changes in the other parts. Even Ryudo didn't expect such a good thing to happen in the world. Dunya quickly took off her coat and checked her body from head to toe. After confirming that there were no visible changes, Ryudo finally let out a sigh of relief. Although Dunya was an expired loli was still a loli. Longdo was really afraid that she would turn into a red giant because of the hell butterfly's poison. If that was the case, he might as well commit suicide on the spot and start all over again. But fortunately she was fine now. The girl's skin was still snow white and tender, her slender waist, flat chest, and petite feet were all fine. It was exactly the same as what Ryudo saw when he peeked in the Tokyo Emperor Hotel. Speaking of which, her waist was so thin that he could hold half of it with one hand, and her feet were so small at most about 32 size, and her chest was so flat that he almost couldn't feel it. Ryudo checked Dunya while touching her body all over. After a while, he realized that what he was doing didn't seem to be appropriate. There's nothing wrong with me, right? But fortunately, Dunya's nerves were relatively thick, and at this time, she was nervous about her body, so she didn't realize that she was actually in a state where she should call the police. Ahem. After coughing to cover up his embarrassment, Ryudo smiled and said, "There should be no problem, but for safety's sake, I'll accompany you to the hospital tomorrow for a thorough examination." Well, then, what about tonight? Suddenly, Dunya was slightly relieved, but she still asked shyly, "You rest here tonight. If you feel uncomfortable, you can call me at any time. It's too troublesome to call you at any time. Why don't you just stay here with me, okay?" Speaking of this, Dunya's little face slightly blushed, but judging from her cold hands and feet, the girl at this time was obviously still a little scared in her heart. Even if Dunya was strong and brave, she was still a girl a few months away from the marriageable age of 16. It was normal for her to feel scared when encountering this kind of situation. Okay, then I'll lie here for a while. If you have any problems, you must call me at the first moment, understand? If it was a normal time, Ryudo definitely wouldn't sleep in the same room with Dunya, but now her situation was a bit special, so he couldn't care so much. Just like this, Dunya lay on the bed on the tatami in the middle of the room, and Ryudo lay with his back facing Dunya. The two of them could be considered to have a peaceful night. Logically speaking, although the two of them were in the same room, they still scrupulously followed etiquette. Tomorrow morning, they would wake up as good men, so there shouldn't be any problems. Unless early in the morning, a car from Kamishiro Villa would directly send the big sister of Rulon Group to the door. Dancing costume, wait here for a while, I'll be right out. Yes, Mississippi. When the sun shone on the ground the next morning, under the gaze of 16 Knights dancing costume, colored glaze, who hadn't come to find Ryudo for a long time for school, leisurely walked towards Rulon Group headquarters. However, judging from Lioli's relaxed expression, she definitely wouldn't be able to guess what kind of shocking scene she would be witnessing in a moment. Chapter 258. Four-colored glaze, going in and out of the Rulon Group headquarters, was as natural as going in and out of her own home. The guards would automatically open the door when they saw her. She no longer needed to kick the door open. As the antique door was slowly pushed open, Lu Li's slim figure swaggered into the room like a mistress of the house, and walked into the bedroom of the master of the house. Because she had lived here for a period of time, Lu Li could be said to be familiar with the place along the way. The people she saw along the way also nodded and greeted her respectfully. She really had the feeling of a hostess. The morning air is really good. There were many plants planted in the Rulon Group headquarters, and the buildings were scattered, so the air was fresh. Walking on the wooden floor accompanied by a refreshing breeze in the early morning was indeed a pleasant feeling. After a while, colored glaze arrived at the door of Ryudo's room and knocked on the door. Knock knock. 3 seconds passed, and there was no response. Knock knock knock. She knocked again, and 5 seconds passed, and there was still no response. He's not here. He woke up so early. No, this guy didn't sleep here last night. Colored glaze opened the door and glanced around. She found that it was empty inside, and the bedsheets were neat and tidy. It didn't look like someone had just slept here. Where did that guy go? Hey, Auntie, do you know where Ryudo is? Just as Colored Glaze was wondering why Ryudo disappeared so early in the morning, an auntie in charge of cleaning walked by, so she stopped her and asked. The auntie seemed to be hesitant, but she still reported. Last night, the young master seemed to be resting at the Shura room. I don't know anything else. Shura room? Why did he choose to sleep in the guest room instead of his own bedroom? Hearing this, Colored Glaze thanked the auntie and walked towards the Shura room. Because of the special nature of the dragon group, the names of the rooms inside were also very much like a Chinibu style. Between Rakshasas, between hell, between demons, between yakshas. In Colored Glaze's eyes, These names were F*King ridiculous. Who would want to stay in a guest room like this? The cabinets would probably move by themselves at night. Coincidentally, the place where Ryuto stayed last night was the legendary Shura's room. This name was very appropriate. Just like that, Colored Glaze quietly walked in the direction of Shura's room. Her footsteps were careful and cautious, and she made almost no sound, as if she wanted to scare someone. Speaking of which, I haven't come to look for him recently. He must be lonely by himself. Well, I didn't come here because I wanted to see him. I didn't come here because I wanted to go to school with him. I just wanted to give this guy a little benefit so that I could tie him down tightly. Well, that's it. After standing at the door and making up her mind, Colored Glaze pushed open the door and walked into the bedroom of Shura's room. Because it was early in the morning, the lights in the room were not turned on. Only a faint light penetrated through the door. What appeared in front of her was an exquisite little room. In the middle of the living room, she could vaguely see a bed placed on a tatami. There was a large bulge on the bed. It was obvious that someone was lying on top of it and resting. Oh, who is it? When Colored Glaze pushed open the door and walked in, Ryuto, who was lying on the bed, finally woke up. He then asked in a surprised tone. But the moment he woke up, Ryuto first let out a cry of surprise. The reason for the cry was obviously because he found another big problem. He found a big problem. What? What is this? It can't be. After rubbing his eyes, Ryuto looked at the unnatural bulge under the quilt. He then felt the warmth and heaviness on his legs and waist. Only then did he finally realize what happened. If it was just a problem under the quilt, it wouldn't be a big problem. The real problem was that Colored Glaze actually walked in at this time without saying anything. Damn it. Suddenly, a few drops of cold sweat fell from Ryuto's forehead. He looked like a heartless man who was about to be found out by his wife. But Colored Glaze didn't seem to notice Ryuto's strangeness. She chuckled and said, "It's me. Why don't you sleep in the room and sleep in the guest room?" As she spoke, she walked in and opened the curtain next to her. Whoosh! The sunlight poured into the room along with the breeze. At the same time, it also shone on Ryuto's face that was covered in cold sweat. It was just a moment of interest, just a moment of interest. Can you go out first? I'm going to change my clothes. Gulp. After the window was opened, Ryuto swallowed a mouthful of saliva. But he still forced himself to remain calm and tried to chase Colored Glaze out of the room first. Okay, who wants to see you change? Strange. Why does this guy's quilt feel strange? It seems to be especially bulging. Because the curtains were opened, the light in the room was brighter. When Colored Glaze turned to look at Ryuto, she also noticed the abnormality on the bed. At this time, the lower half of this guy's body was covered in the bulging quilt. Only his upper body in messy casual clothes could be seen. Under normal circumstances, it was unlikely that he would wear such clothes to sleep. Not only was his collar messy, but there were also some slight claw marks on his cheeks, neck, and chest that were exposed. That's right, claw marks. Although Ryuto himself didn't notice it, Colored Glaze saw the strange marks on his body. Was he scratched by a cat? It can't be right. Ryuto didn't have a cat, and the distance between these claw marks was much larger than a cat's. It looked like, Instantly, Colored Glaze's body froze. She seemed to have thought of a scene that she often saw in TV dramas or novels. And the name of that scene was Catching an Adulterer in Bed. Impossible. That guy Ryuto wouldn't do such a thing. Colored Glaze didn't want to think too much about it. But the unnatural bulge on the bed, Ryuto's sneaky expression, and the fact that he suddenly moved to the guest room, had claw marks on his body, and his clothes were messy. It was hard not to think too much about it. Just as Colored Glaze was thinking, Ryuto obviously panicked. He tried his best to put on an embarrassed expression and laughed awkwardly. Miss Colored Glaze? I really need to change my clothes, okay? Is that so? Then I'll help you change. In the next moment, Colored Glaze's lips curved into a sweet smile. Ugh. This smile was like a punch to Ryuto's face. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, how can I do that? Don't say that. Didn't you say that you'll marry me in a year? Then we'll be considered as an engaged couple. Isn't it the wife's duty to change her husband's clothes? Looking at Colored Glaze's virtuous wifey expression and graceful movements, Ryudo would be very happy if it was any other time. But now he could only sweat and say, yes, it's like that, but right now I'm a little. Ugh. Just as Ryudo was desperately trying to find a way to dodge it, a soft moan suddenly came from under his blanket. This sound was made by a woman, and it seemed that the woman was still in a half-awake state. The moment she heard this sound, Colored Glaze's mouth stretched into a few angles. It looked like she was smiling even more brightly, but there was no smile in her eyes. Lou, Colored Glaze? Actually, I've been practicing ventriloquism recently. Would you believe me? What do you think? I think you would believe me. After all, we're. However, in the next second, just as Ryudo was desperately looking for an excuse, Colored Glaze immediately reached out her hand and pulled at the speed of lightning. With a clean and neat technique, he lifted the quilt from his body. Ryudo swore that Colored Glaze's speed of pulling was absolutely not compatible with her LV1 physique. Crumbs of the world physical ability. It was as if she had cultivated some strange skill like lightning flash. After the blanket was pulled away, under Ryudo's expression that looked like he wanted to die on the spot and Colored Glaze's Azura-like gaze, a familiar figure appeared on the bed. It was a very young girl. At this time, she was only wearing a simple set of underwear, causing her figure to look even more petite. Moreover, her exposed skin was even more snow-white and smooth. At this time, her long silver hair was not tied into a cute double ponytail like usual. Instead, it was completely draped over Ryudo's body. Coupled with the arms tightly hugging Ryudo's waist, and the legs wrapped around his right leg, she looked like a large silver-haired koala. It was Dunya. Obviously, the girl who appeared on Ryudo's bed was Dunya. At this time, she was hugging Ryudo's waist, her small face pressed against the man's waist. With a satisfied expression, she continued to sleep soundly, completely ignoring the surrounding temperature that suddenly dropped by a few degrees. Suddenly, the smile on Colored Glaze's face became even brighter. Her gaze towards Ryudo showed a sense of contempt that said, "Look, this man is like trash. Trash, scum, slut, lowlife, scum, bastard, ruffian, wretched man, stinking hooligan, shameless, scoundrel, scumbag, rotten man, scum of society, beast in human face, beast in human clothing." This was the first time Ryudo knew that humans could express so many different words through their gazes. But facing such a terrible situation, he smiled bitterly and said, "Actually, I can explain. Why don't you listen to my explanation first? Then think about what to do next." Actually, it would have been better if he did not speak. Once he spoke, Colored Glaze was so angry that she immediately kicked him. According to Ryudo's knowledge, Colored Glaze always had the habit of kicking things when she was angry. He did not expect that one day, the one being kicked would be him. Explain? Explain? Explain. If explaining is useful, why do we need police in this world? Suddenly, Colored Glaze scolded in exasperation while raising her small black pantyhose foot to kick Ryudo. Her kick made Ryudo not know whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 259. Colored Glaze's kicks were like mosquito bites to Ryudo. They didn't hurt at all, and were soft like a massage. In addition, this young lady was used to wearing black stockings or pantyhose under her skirt. The bottom of the high-grade pantyhose felt silky smooth to the touch, which increased the awkwardness of this action. It didn't look like an attack, but more like a flirting. "Bastard. Scum. Scum. Okay, listen to my explanation first." After being kicked a few times by Colored Glaze, Ryudo, who was afraid that she would cover her feet and jump around on the spot, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He reached out and grabbed the girl's ankle to prevent her from doing such meaningless actions. Let go." After Ryudo grabbed her ankle, Colored Glaze struggled violently. But with her little strength, how could she break free? She could only rage helplessly. "Listen to my explanation first, then I'll let go. Scram! Stinky pervert." "Phew, you don't want to listen, right? Then I won't hold back." Seeing that Colored Glaze wasn't listening to him, Ryudo decided to use some violent methods. He grabbed Colored Glaze's little foot and threw it to the side. He skillfully disrupted the girl's balance, causing her to slip and fall onto the bed unconsciously. Then, she was embraced by a perverted right arm. After putting Colored Glaze on the bed, a very strange scene appeared on the bed. On Ryudo's right was Dunya, who was hugging his waist. Her slender snow-white legs were wrapped around his right leg. On Ryudo's left was Colored Glaze, who was lying on the ground. He pulled her body as close to his chest as possible, letting the two of them lean their heads together. Hugging left and right, it was truly a blessing, especially since both of them were top-notch beauties. This made him even more blessed, and it was about to overflow. I didn't do anything to Dunya. She was poisoned last night. I was afraid that something would happen to her, so I stayed in the guest room to accompany her. It's that simple. Before Colored Glaze could continue to flip out, Ryudo leaned his face close to hers and stared into her eyes. He spoke in a serious tone. Of course, that was indeed the case, and he wasn't lying. Last night, it was indeed because Dunya was poisoned by the hell butterfly. Ryudo was worried that something would happen to her, so he agreed to sleep here. If anything happened, he could immediately buy medicine from the Krypton Gold Mall to save her life. In Ryudo's Krypton shopping mall, there were all kinds of wonderful medicines that could be saved as long as one did not die on the spot. It was just a matter of whether one was willing to spend the money, but for some reason Long Do, who was supposed to be sleeping next to the bed, seemed to have been pulled into the bed by someone and then hugged like a pillow to sleep. Among the three in Ryudo's harem, Dunya knew the least about the matters between men and women. Therefore, even if she was fully awake, she probably wouldn't know what this kind of physical change meant, let alone in this kind of confused state where she had just woken up. Not sure if it was out of instinct, or because she felt that thing was blocking her view, Dunya reached out her white and smooth hand to grab it, and after holding it, she wanted to move it away. If it was a normal girl doing this, it would definitely be very enjoyable. But Dunya, compared to a normal girl, her strength was definitely more than 100 million points, which was more than 10 times, to the point where she could pull any organ out of a person's body with her bare hands. Thus, in the next second, a series of panicked screams came from the room. Dunya, what are you doing? Let go. Let go. Aha. Dunya could swear that she had never heard Long Do make such an anxious cry, as if he would cause some kind of tragedy if he didn't let go of Long Do. Ugh. Morning. What happened to you just now? After a few seconds, Dunya finally let go, rubbing her eyes as she climbed up from the bed. But she saw that Ryudo's face was a little pale, as if he was seriously frightened, and was covering a certain part of his body on the ground. No, it's nothing, you're awake. Suddenly, Ryudo couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva, but his face revealed a timid smile. Although Dunya didn't know what happened, Ryudo knew that the situation just now was actually very dangerous, especially when this stinky brat held the dragon head staff and was about to break it down. If it wasn't for Ryudo's quick reaction and blocking with his hand, he would have become the first eunuch in Japan. Too terrifying, too terrifying. Thinking of the terrifying scene just now, Ryudo couldn't help but sigh. After waking up, the second thing Dunya saw was Colored Glaze sitting on the bed with a red face and a slightly weak body. She asked curiously, "What are you doing here? And why is your face so red? Are you uncomfortable?" Actually, she's not blushing because she's uncomfortable, but because she's too comfortable. Ba 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 ba. Shut up. Don't say any more. Go back to your room and change your clothes. Before Ryudo could finish his half-teasing and half-flirting words, Colored Glaze blushed and pushed him out of Shura's room. Although Colored Glaze's strength couldn't push Ryudo, he took the opportunity to escape from this Shura's room and went back to his room to change his clothes and wash up. After Ryudo left, Colored Glaze turned to look at Dunya, who was sitting on the bed and stretching. She frowned and said, "Hurry up and change your clothes." Actually wearing this and hugging Ryudo to sleep, really shameless. Hearing Colored Glaze's words, although Dunya was relatively slow, but she could roughly smell the sour taste in the words. Aya. The girl grinned and laughed arrogantly. Could it be that someone is jealous? No way. Could it be that someone hasn't slept with Ryudo before? Humph. You're still helping others count the money after being sold. Is your brain filled with vodka? Seeing Dunia's expression of being taken advantage of, but still thinking that she was cool, Colored Glaze really wanted to kick her. But she didn't dare. After all, Dunia wasn't Ryudo. If she kicked this bear, she would definitely be beaten back, and Colored Glaze couldn't beat Dunia. But no matter what, Dunia still changed into her usual clothes and followed Colored Glaze outside to eat breakfast. Seeing that this little rascal was drinking vodka so early in the morning, Miss Leoli scolded her angrily again. But of course, Dong Nia didn't pay her any attention. Instead, she drank even more vigorously, and even deliberately made pausing sounds. This atmosphere, it's really troublesome. Although he already knew that Dunia and Colored Glaze's relationship wasn't that good, it was obvious that after the left-hugging right incident, just this morning, the two's antagonistic relationship had a new development. Especially when Ryudo sat on the left and right of the two girls in a car and drove towards Takuri First High. He finally understood what it meant to be in a dilemma. No matter what Colored Glaze said, Dunia would find fault with her, and vice versa. And no matter how Ryudo replied to one of them, the other would take the opportunity to find fault with Ryudo. It was like kicking him around like a rubber ball. The scariest thing was that these two girls started bickering at the dining table, all the way to the school gate. And they were still bickering, with Ryudo sandwiched between them. It felt like a live performance of a palace drama. This wasn't 2 slices of bread with cheese, but 2 frying pans with a hot dog. Ryudo felt like he was a hot dog sandwiched between 2 hot frying pans. No matter which side he leaned towards, he would be scalded until he couldn't take care of himself. After being annoyed to the point that he had no choice, Ryudo took advantage of the 2 girls bickering to sneak away, quickly sneaking into the front of the school. Sigh, I really don't know what to do with them. If only Yunyan was here. When he walked through the school gate, Ryudo couldn't help but miss Yunyan. After all, only that woman could use her status as the main wife to restrain Dunia and Colored Glaze, not letting them chatter to death beside Ryudo's ear. And compared to the impatient Dunia and the long-winded Colored Glaze, the gentle and pleasant Yunyan was more in line with the identity of a girlfriend, and when he was with her, he felt more comfortable in various senses. Chapter 260. However, just as Ryudo was thinking about this, he really did see a familiar tall figure not far away. Her long brown hair was as light as a cloud, and she was especially tall among her peers. She had a voluptuous figure, and she had a celestial charm that could cause the downfall of a city. When he thought that such a gentle and lovely senior was actually his girlfriend, Ryudo's mind that was about to boil from the quarrel between Colored Glaze and Dunia early in the morning immediately calmed down. Thus, Ryudo hurriedly ran over and patted her shoulder at the same time. He smiled and said, "Yunyan, good morning." But just as Ryudo patted the woman's shoulder, the woman turned her head and said angrily, "Ah, who are you calling hey? I'll kill you." "I'm the one who wants to ask who are you?" After knowing Yunyan for so long, this was the first time Ryudo was yelled at by her. Moreover, it was the kind of yell that had a ferocious face and eyes that were burning with anger, as if she would attack at the slightest disagreement. Did I see the wrong person? Is this really Yunyan from Suki? After being yelled at, Ryudo saw Yunyan's outfit clearly. How should he describe it? Normally, senior sister Yunyan gave off a gentle and beautiful feeling. Her neat and tidy school uniform was spotless, and there was always a gentle smile on her face without any makeup. It made people want to make a statue of her and worship her. But what was up with Yunyan today? She was wearing a school uniform with long sleeves and a long skirt that was completely out of season. Her crew collar tie was crooked in front of her chest, and her hair was slightly messy. Her lips were smeared with red lipstick, and there was a cigarette in the shape of fruit candy. This style actually had a special adjective in Japan, called delinquent girl. That's right. It was the kind of delinquent who would walk in groups of 3 to 5, and make a lot of noise on the street, and would pull out a steel pipe from under her long skirt at any time to fight. However, the sudden change in her appearance and Yunyan's attitude shocked Ryudo. This woman was clearly not a delinquent girl. Just as Ryudo was sizing up his girlfriend in surprise, Yunyan raised her eyebrows and said impatiently, "What are you looking at? Have you never seen a woman before?" No, I just feel a little unused to it." After sensing Yunyan's boss-like aura, Ryudo didn't know what to say for a moment. He could only retreat half a step like a reserved primary school student. Ha. Seeing Ryudo's expression, Yunyan finally couldn't hold it in anymore. The malevolent expression on her face instantly collapsed. She laughed so hard that she bent forward and backward. Her long skirt swayed back and forth, looking very cute. This laugh made Yunyan change from the delinquent girl just now to the gentle senior sister Ryudo knew, as if the scene just now was just an illusion. This sudden change made Ryudo dumbfounded. He asked suspiciously, "Yunyan? What are you doing?" Sorry, I'm just kidding. Actually, I'm trying to cosplay." Suddenly, Yunyan showed her usual gentle smile. She took out a handkerchief and wiped off the bright color on her lips. She looked a lot more pleasing to the eye than the delinquent girl just now. Cosplay. It wasn't that Ryudo hadn't heard of this term, but he didn't think that this term could be used together with Yunyan. Generally speaking, cosplay was to play a role in the virtual world or the real world through costumes. The players were also called cosplayers. It was quite common in this country, but Yunyan didn't seem to have anything to do with cosplay. Why did she cosplay as a delinquent girl to come to school early in the morning? According to Yunyan's explanation, she was actually collecting material for her next novel. Because in Yunyan's next novel, the heroine is a cosplayer. The heroine usually looks like an ordinary campus idol, but she will cosplay as various characters at night to fight against the strange people in the streets and alleys. What do you think? Interesting setting, right? It's really interesting, but this kind of setting usually only appears in some strange works. Strange works? What do you mean? Ahem, nothing, you can continue. Although she didn't know what Ryudo's words meant, Yunyan still explained her idea. In order to know how the heroine felt when cosplaying as various characters, Yunyan began to study this special style of dress and tried to simulate the psychological changes after cosplaying. So there was a strange scene of her dressing up as a delinquent girl to school early in the morning. I think a character should be played from the inside out. It's not as simple as changing the appearance. So I just imitated the delinquent girl's attitude and yelled at you. I'm really sorry. When mentioning the matter of yelling at Ryudo, Yunyan still nodded apologetically with a guilty look. Ryudo also smiled generously and said, "It's okay. Anyway, you look quite fresh. Yelling at me is fine. I won't care about this small matter." "That's great. That, if you don't mind, can you accompany me to Akihabara after school?" "Akihabara? Why are we going there?" After hearing this strange yet familiar name, Ryudo showed a puzzled expression. Anyone who had a little understanding of 2D and otaku culture should know that the so-called Akihabara was a street with the special name of 2D Sacred Place. Although this street in the Chiyoda district used to be famous for selling home appliances, after the beginning of the new century, the streets of Akihabara were filled with maids soliciting business. Rows upon rows of anime stores, colorful game halls, computer accessories crowded the alleys, and 2D posters everywhere. However, although he knew what kind of place it was, Ryudo had never been to Akihabara before because there was no need. He didn't have time to play games, watch anime, play Brother Pow, or go to the maid cafe. He also didn't need to buy a computer or electrical appliances. So it was an area that had nothing to do with him as a young master. But today, Yunyan took the initiative to invite him to Akihabara, and the reason was that there was going to be a cosplay competition there. According to the information I gathered on the internet, the cosplay competition will be held this afternoon at the Akihabara New Hall. At that time, all the famous cosplayers from all over the country will be there. They are all professionals, so it should be very helpful for me to gather materials. When it came to gathering materials, Yunyan's eyes emitted bursts of light. It was obvious that she was very excited about it. Gathering materials was a necessary step for a successful creator to mature. There was once a famous manga artist who said, "The reason why I play mahjong every day is not because I like mahjong, but because I want to find inspiration for my manga from mahjong. This is a kind of gathering material. Ooh, unparalleled. Ha 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 ha. Playing mahjong is so satisfying." Of course, Yunyan didn't need this kind of gathering material. She wanted to gather material about the cosplay female lead in the novel she wanted to write. However, it was the first time that Yunyan went to such a strange place. So, she wanted Ryudo to accompany her to the cosplay competition to see how professional cosplayers worked. So it's like this. After understanding the cause and effect, Ryudo nodded and smiled. "Then I'll go with you. Just treat it as a special date." Okay. Hearing this, Yunyan jumped up happily, and then mysteriously whispered in his ear, "After the materials are collected, I will wear all kinds of cosplay clothes for you to see. Hee. Just take it as a reward for accompanying me on a date." Yunyan, wear all kinds of cosplay clothes? Instantly, Ryudo couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Then, he looked up and down at Yunyan, as if he was imagining the scene of her tall and voluptuous body, wearing all kinds of cosplay clothes. Don't misunderstand, Ryudo wasn't interested in cosplay. He didn't want to see Yunyan wearing maid outfits, witch outfits, Lolita outfits, bridal outfits, nurse outfits, stewardess outfits, policewoman outfits, school swimwear, gymnastics outfits, tights, and other strange outfits. As for the dirty idea of matching it with bubble socks, knee socks, mandarin duck socks, fake knee socks, garter socks, pantyhose, and so on, he had never even thought of it. Probably never thought of it. So Ryudo went with Yunyan to the cosplay competition because he wanted to support her novel. It wasn't because he wanted to see her wearing all kinds of cosplay clothes. That's right, I, Ryudo Kiryu, am definitely not that kind of person. With this self-deceiving thought, Ryudo spent a very slow day. When the school bell rang in the afternoon, he rushed out of the classroom and ran towards the third-grade building where Yunyan was. But when the two arrived at the Akihabara New Hall, in Narukai's high-speed car, Ryudo noticed something strange. Isn't that? It can't be? It's Ryudo Kiryu. Oh, that person's acting is really good. Should we take a picture with him or something? When Ryudo and Yunyan stood at the entrance of the Akihabara New Hall, the surrounding audience, who were obviously here to watch the competition, couldn't help but discuss behind their backs. But the topic of the audience's discussion sounded a little strange to Ryudo. What do they mean? That person's acting is really good? What am I acting as? However, just when he was puzzled, not far away from the crowd, a fatty wearing the Dory First High School uniform with cheap dyed blonde hair walked out. The fatty looked to be at least 200 pounds. The grease secreted from his face was enough to make people sick to death. His entire body emitted a greasy smell, but when he saw Ryudo standing at the entrance, he excitedly ran over and patted Ryudo's shoulder. He laughed and said, "Hey brother, you're also acting as Ryudo Kiryu? What a coincidence, me too." When he saw the fatty dressed like him, Ryudo almost wanted to punch him. But from this sentence, Ryudo finally understood what the people around him were thinking. That's right, this group of Akihabara 2D residents seemed to think that Ryudo was acting as himself, acting as the recently powerful young master. It was that simple. Chapter 261. The so-called cosplay actually didn't have any rigid requirements for the cosplay object. Whether it was cosplaying a character in a manga, anime, game, movie, or even a real-life character, it could all be treated as a cosplay. In this case, the most eye-catching popular person at each time period, and it had to be a very unique kind of popular person, would definitely be the first choice for cosplay. For example, a certain Kyoto leader who was recently popular in Tokyo. And from an objective point of view, Ryudo was really too unique. As everyone knew, Ryudo Kiryu was a Kyoto young master and a Kyoto leader. His identity was very special, and he often appeared on the internet because of various news, becoming the topic of conversation. Secondly, his appearance was also very unique. His low-quality dyed golden hair looked a bit like a Super Saiyan figurine, with the paint peeling off. He often wore the Dory First High School uniform and ran around outside. He was also very handsome, and his temperament was very special and perfect. Therefore, the two elements of low-quality dyed golden hair and Dory First High School uniform combined together became the standard template of Ryudo Kiryu cosplay. In fact, when he saw the fatty with a greasy face cosplay him outside, Ryudo had already guessed what kind of scene might appear in a while. But he didn't expect it to be so exaggerated. Because the Akihabara cosplay competition was about to be held, this Akihabara New Hall was already bustling with people, and most of them were two-dimensional people wearing cosplay clothes. He didn't know if it was because of the popularity of Ryudo recently, or if it was because the threshold to cosplay as him was relatively low. But as far as the eye could see, all the male cosplayers in the hall were cosplaying as Tongsheng Ryudo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It was already impossible to count. Suddenly, Yunyan looked around and shouted in surprise. Wow, so many Ryudo! And some of them are really good cosplayers. Spare me, is there something wrong with this group of people? Although Yunyan was very interested in observing the group of Ryudo cosplayers around her, the original host next to her helplessly covered his face, as if he didn't know how to complain. Looking to the left, it's me. Looking to the right, it's me. Looking to the front and back, it's still me. This feeling was really strange, as if someone poked Ryudo's nest, and a lot of fake Ryudo Kiryu fell out from it, drowning him in it. However, thanks to him, Ryudo and Yunyan walking around the hall didn't cause any commotion. After all, everyone thought that Ryudo was also a cosplayer, and not the real person. As for Yunyan, on the one hand, she was wearing a long school uniform, and on the other hand, she was wearing a mask that covered half of her face, so she didn't seem so eye-catching. As a result, the two of them were able to enjoy the relaxing atmosphere here, strolling around while holding hands like an ordinary couple. Due to the special identity of Ryudo and Yunyan, even if they went out on a date, they didn't dare to openly hold hands. This time, they unexpectedly got what they wanted. When the two strolled around, there were a lot of audience curiously looking at the two, and even ran over to ask for a photo. That Ryudo cosplayer is really good, the quality is so high. There's also a delinquent girl next to him, ha ha ha, what a match. A handsome man, a beautiful woman, and a delinquent, it's a match made in heaven. Listening to the praises around her, Yunyan's eyes narrowed with a smile. Hey, they're all praising us for being a good match. She reached out and grabbed Ryudo's arm, and half of her body leaned over, looking like a cute girl in love. Of course, we're a good match. Just when Ryudo and Yunyan were sweetly sticking together, the loudspeaker in the venue suddenly sounded. Ahem, everyone, this time's Ryudo Kiryu cosplay competition is about to start. Please move to the fake as authentic booth in the center of the hall and enjoy the passionate performances of dozens of cosplayers from all over the country. Oh, it's starting, let's go. After hearing the announcement from the loudspeaker, the group of cosplayers and audience quickly ran to the center of the hall. It was like they were fighting for food in the cafeteria. Wait, how come I don't know that this competition is called Ryudo Kiryu Cosplay Competition ? I think it's because all the contestants are cosplaying as you, so they changed the name. Anyway, it's more or less the same. Although Ryudo did not know whether to laugh or cry at the fact that so many people were cosplaying as him, Yunyan was obviously very happy about it, because it showed how charming her boyfriend was. Not long after, a long table that looked like a press conference was placed neatly in front of the large booth that was filled with spectators. Behind the table sat 3 people who looked like judges. The 3 judges were an old man wearing an old-fashioned kimono with white hair and a beard. The other one was a middle-aged man in a suit who looked like he had just gotten off work. The last one was a middle-aged woman who was dressed like Lolita, but her face was covered with 30 centimeters of powder. When Ryudo and Yunyan found a place to stand, someone looked at the judges and exclaimed, "TSK, who would have thought that this cosplay competition would be able to invite these 3 judges. It's really scary. These 3? Who are they? After hearing this, Ryudo could not help but ask. You don't even know them? That person glanced at Long Do with disdain. And then he introduced the 3 legendary figures, who were known as the 3 giants of Autumn Leaf Plains. The old man in the kimono was called Otaku Sennin. It was said that he had devoted his entire life to the great otaku industry, collecting hundreds of thousands of manga and anime. As he had too many manga at home, he could only live in a paper house under the bridge. The middle-aged man was called Gaming Otaku King. He had been playing all kinds of video games since he was born, and devoted his limited life to the infinite gaming world. Later on, he even joined the gaming company Nintendo, and became the exclusive game tester of Nintendo. Lastly, Aunt Larita was known as the Cosplay Empress. She had more than 30 years of cosplay experience, and had cosplayed close to 10,000 ACG characters. Because she cosplayed too many characters, she even developed the symptoms of dissociative identity disorder. There were more than 10 personalities residing in her body, and she was proud of it. Sennin, Otaku Sennin and Empress. These 3 were known as the Big 3 in Akihabara, due to their extraordinary achievements in various aspects. And this time, the 3 of them were actually the judges of the Ryudo Kiryu cosplay competition. It was no wonder that the surrounding audience was shocked. Just as the competition was about to start, Sennin, who was sitting in the middle of the judges, held a pot of wolfberry tea inside. Phew, I hope that this time, I will be able to see some young people with backbone, so that my trip here will not be in vain. Oh ho ho, I'm afraid that will be a little difficult. After all, the cosplay characters this time are different from ordinary people, and not everyone can act with such grandeur. The cosplay empress beside him laughed coldly, and at the same time, she opened the folding fan in her hand and covered half of her face. It's useless to say more, let's see who's the real deal. Let's start, we can't wait any longer. Finally, Otaku Sennin, who was sitting on the side, pushed up the glasses on the bridge of his nose, and crossed his fingers in front of his face. The pure white reflection on the lenses revealed a posture of a bad person. Yes, everyone, the first Ryudo Kiryu cosplay competition is about to begin. Let's welcome the first cosplayer. Perhaps because the aura of the Big 3 was too strong, the beautiful host standing on the stage said in a slightly stiff tone, and at the same time, she stretched out her hand and made a please gesture to the side of the passage. Under the spotlight, the first person to walk up the stage from the contestants' passage was the fat guy, who talked to Ryudo outside the hall. He walked aggressively to the center of the stage, bowed slightly, and began his performance. According to the rules of this competition, each contestant was required to perform a Ryudo Kiryu famous scene after going on stage, and then a comprehensive score was given based on his performance, costume, and makeup. The famous scene performed by the fat guy was the third act of Extreme Secret Book, Dark City. Ryudo Kiryu Yoshiyuki, which was the scene where Ryudo rushed into the enemy's formation alone and defeated the old thief Sakata. Old thief, do you dare to fight me to the death? Why yeah. Ha. Humph. Ah. Accompanied by shameful lines and unintelligible shouts, the fat man cosplaying as a dragon started fighting on the stage out of nowhere. He rolled, hit, and kicked on the stage, and it looked very lively, but the fighting movements, it was a bit like the old ladies and grandpas in the street park doing aerobics. The most exaggerated thing was that the person on the stage was performing an awkward performance that made Ryudo's scalp tingle, but the audience was constantly cheering. Good. Hey. Very energetic. Although the body is not quite the same, at least the posture is there. When the fat guy finished a set of Ryudo Hooligan Fist, the 3 judges also nodded one by one and gave a passable score, which was considered a pass. Seeing the fat guy walk off the stage with his hands raised, Union said excitedly, "Wow, so cosplaying Ryudo is like this, it looks really. Hey, why are you squatting on the ground?" Originally, Union said to Ryudo that, "It looks really interesting." But when she turned her head, she found that the person next to her was actually squatting on the ground with his head in his hands, with a "who the hell did I offend" expression on his face. I'm really not that kind of person. I'm really not that kind of person. Seeing the second Ryudo cosplayer walk onto the stage and begin to perform breaking rocks on his chest under the cheers of the audience, Ryudo could only stand under the stage awkwardly. He wanted to dig a hole and bury himself in it. Chapter 262. Ryudo finally understood. This time, the Tongsheng Dragon Battle Cosplay Competition was written as Cosplay Competition, which meant Dragon Battle Execution Competition. Looking at the professional cosplayers who dressed exactly like him performing all kinds of extreme talents on stage, Ryudo really wanted to go back to the unrestrained Sky Tower and fight with IM for 300 rounds. It was better than being publicly executed here. In this short half an hour, the group of Ryudo cosplayers on stage made all kinds of shameful poses while saying a lot of Chinibu quotes. They also performed a mess of talents one by one. Hooligan fist technique, smashing boulders on chest, golden bell cover iron underpants, steel spear choke, spitting flames from mouth, catching bullets with bare hands, swallowing swords with mouth, and so on. Ryudo didn't know until now that he actually had so many fancy skills in the rumors. Even his original body had the feeling of, what kind of monster is Ryudo Kiryu? But although Ryudo was blushing with shame as he watched, Yunyan next to him was watching with great interest. She jumped up and down from time to time, raised her hand and cheered from time to time, looking like a female fan who came to watch a concert. In this enthusiastic atmosphere, the dozens of professional Ryudo cosplayers who signed up for the competition finished their appearance one by one. The beautiful host walked up the stage again. Logically speaking, the next part should be the judges announcing the final winners, and then all the Ryudo cosplayers would come up together for a group photo. But unfortunately, after the host went up the stage, she just happened to see Ryudo standing in the crowd, looking at the stage with a numb gaze. Isn't there another Ryudo cosplayer? Did I just miss him? No way. Because the host was a newbie, she was especially afraid of making mistakes, especially in front of the Akihabara 3. Forget it. Regardless of whether it was true or not, let him come up and perform first. Therefore, she steeled her heart, raised the microphone and shouted, "Okay, next, let's welcome the last cosplayer of the day with the warmest applause." Ding 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 ding. Under the host's signal, the lighting engineer above also shone the spotlight on Ryudo himself. What the hell? Just as the host looked at him, the spotlight shone on him, and the hundreds of eyes around him looked over. Long Do was completely dumbfounded. What did that guy say? The last Ryudo cosplayer? She couldn't be talking about. Could she be talking about me? After feeling the expectant gazes around him, Ryudo couldn't help but gulp. To be honest, it was already embarrassing for him to stand here and watch his imposter perform acrobatics with Yunyan. For him to perform on stage. Ugh. When he thought of this, Ryudo couldn't help but want to take out his gun and shoot himself in the head. However, although Ryudo wanted to run away or commit suicide on the spot, Yunyan on the side excitedly pushed his shoulder and laughed. Oh, that's great. Go. Let them see how powerful the real Ryudo is. You really want me to go up? Go on. What's there to be embarrassed about? Before Ryudo could react, Yunyan smiled and pushed him forward in the crowd. She looked like a little fangirl who wanted to see her boyfriend shine on stage. Damn it. Although Ryudo himself didn't want to go on stage and act like a hooligan, since his girlfriend said so, he had to go up. Therefore, under the excited gazes of many people, Ryudo walked stiffly on stage like a robot, as if he was walking to his own guillotine. Torture, it was really torture. Ryudo had experienced countless big scenes. He fought with the world's evilest people face to face, had hundreds of guns pointed at him, was chased by thousands of people in one night, and even challenged a contemporary martial arts master with his bare hands. However, Ryudo would rather go through all the hardships he had experienced before than run to the Ryudo Kiryu cosplay competition to cosplay as himself. It was really embarrassing. This was the most embarrassing scene in history. For Ryudo, it was tantamount to a public execution. When he stood in the middle of the stage, he couldn't help but lower his head and curl his body slightly, looking very embarrassed. God was his witness. This was the first time Ryudo showed such an embarrassed posture. But it was the truth. After all, if people knew that the boss of the Rulon group actually went to Akihabara to cosplay as himself, it would be a social death on the spot. Ryudo would definitely become the laughingstock of the entire underground world. When he thought of this, Ryudo couldn't help but tremble. Of course, no one knew the torture and embarrassment in his heart at this time. In the eyes of the judges and the audience, he was just a coward who had never stood on stage before and was frightened by this big scene. Therefore, the immortal otaku couldn't help but remind him, "Little brother, you seem to be very nervous. Relax a little and just act out your understanding of the character Ryudo Kiryu. I don't know how to act. How about you guys tell me how to act?" In helplessness, Ryudo could only smile bitterly and say to the judges, it was easy to act out someone else's character. Act out his own character? How could he act out that? You don't know? Suddenly, the cosplay empress frowned unhappily and sneered. You don't even know how to act out the character of Ryudo Kiryu. Then why are you dressed like this? Don't underestimate cosplayers, young man. Indeed, the Otaku King added. Cosplay requires a deep understanding of the character's characteristics from the inside out. It's not as simple as dyeing your hair and changing your clothes. You have to bring the character of Ryudo Kiryu to life. Bring the character to life. I've always been alive, okay? How am I supposed to live? After being guided by the Empress and the Otaku King, Ryudo's expression became even more awkward. Obviously, he had never thought that there would be a day when he would be taught how to act as Ryudo Kiryu. Seeing the contestants' incomparably awkward expression, Immortal Otaku took the initiative to suggest, how about this? You can simply act out a scene from Extreme Secret Book, Records of Dark City, Ryudo Kiryu Yoshiyuki. Will that do? Extreme Secret Book, Records of Dark City, Ryudo Kiryu Yoshiyuki, was a script created by the Rulon Group's Extreme Secret Book, Records of Dark City, Ryudo Kiryu Yoshiyuki on the day that Ryudo resolved the Sakata Rebellion. It had become the Bible of Ryudo's fans on the internet. In particular, the scene where Ryudo rushed toward the fully armed Sakata army, while wearing only a loincloth, dodged the bullets, kicked the bulletproof vest, and easily took the head of the enemy general, while being surrounded by thousands of people, had even spread to tens of thousands of doujinshi novels and doujinshi videos. It could be said that it was extremely popular. But the problem was that, of course, Ryudo himself had never seen that thing, and he would not watch it. Because, of course, he knew clearly that the extremely exaggerated descriptions in it were complete nonsense. Of course, the current Ryudo could certainly capture the enemy general with thousands of troops, but at that time, he did not have the ability at all. He relied entirely on the help of the cat house's rabbit ball to win the battle. Ryudo didn't have the face to boast that he had killed Sakata with the help of others. Therefore, he definitely wouldn't read the Extreme Secret Book, Dark City, Tong Shung Ryu's Fighting Righteousness record. That would be too thick-skinned. However, at this time, this group of judges asked him to perform a scene from Extreme Secret Book, Records of Dark City, Ryudo Kiryu Yoshiyuki? What am I supposed to perform? How did I sneak into the Sakata mansion, then fight with Sakata, and finally throw him off the second-floor balcony? Seeing that Ryudo was still at a loss, Immortal Otaku could not help but ask, it can't be right? As the dignified actor of Ryudo Kiryu, you haven't even read Extreme Secret Book, Records of Dark City, Ryudo Kiryu Yoshiyuki? Doesn't this mean that you know nothing about Ryudo Kiryu himself? The cosplay empress criticized without hesitation. You haven't even read that famous book, so you probably don't know much about Ryudo. Then why did you play this role that is not suitable for you? The gaming Otaku King next to him also ridiculed. Indeed, judging from your spirit, you are not on the same level as the character you are playing. In the future, you should know your limits and not choose such a difficult cosplay. What the F asterisk CK? Are you kidding me? When the three judges rushed to point at the unqualified Ryudo cosplayer, Ryudo's expression became more and more unhappy. I know nothing about myself. I know nothing about myself. I'm not on the same level as myself. Listen, is this human language? I can't stand it. Who can stand it, you bastard? Is there anyone in this world who knows me better than me? Is it up to you guys to point fingers at me? Therefore, the moment the judges were about to ask Ryudo to get off the stage and stop wasting time on the stage, a strong murderous aura suddenly swept through the entire Akihabara club. Hiss. Humph. Ryudo took a slight breath and squeezed out a simple humph from between his teeth. But as the sound spread out, the judges and audience who heard the humph could not help but shudder. What is this? What is going on? Immortal Otaku slowly raised his right hand, whose fingerprints were worn out from reading too much manga. That hand had been with Immortal Otaku for countless years, and it had never been afraid even when it was secretly touching a woman's butt. But even so, that hand was trembling nonstop. It was as if a trash with a combat power of 5 had personally witnessed the arrival of the universe's emperor, Frisia. Chapter 263. What? What is this? Who is this person standing on the stage? For a moment, the judges and the audience couldn't help but wonder. Ryudo had experienced so many things, coupled with the fact that his status was getting higher and higher. His unique aura, when he went all out, was simply like those ultimate villains in anime. It was enough to make people pee their pants on the spot. Hence, when he was angered to death by the judges and finally couldn't help but unleash his firepower, the atmosphere in the entire venue suddenly changed. Everyone looked at the contestant on the stage in surprise. Even the three judges couldn't help but react in all sorts of exaggerated ways. Immortal Otaku was so shocked that he almost fell off his chair. The powder on the cosplay empress's face instantly exploded in all directions. The gaming Otaku King's suit quickly disintegrated, revealing the muscles that had been trained from playing games. Ryudo felt extremely pained by this situation. I'll show you what the real Ryudo Kiryu is like. You bunch of idiots who are cheering for an imposter. Wait, I can't do that, right? Originally, Ryudo had planned to announce the return of an ultimate boss and shock the anime world for 100 years. However, halfway through his shock, he realized that he couldn't reveal his identity. Otherwise, he would be in danger of being killed. After all, he was an ultimate boss who had come to Akihabara to show off in front of a group of anime veterans. This wasn't something that would make him look good. On the contrary, it would make people think that he was stupid. What should he do? He was so angry that he seemed to have done something irrational and stupid. Just as the judges and the surrounding audience were staring at the stage in shock, Ryudo couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. At this moment, the gaming Otaku King, who was sitting on the judging panel, swallowed his saliva and tried his best to ask in a calm tone. This contestant from the aura just now, could you be the real Ryudo Kiryu? This question actually represented the doubts of many people in the venue. As the saying went, the real couldn't be fake, and the fake couldn't be real. The difference between the real deal and the fake deal, especially for an extreme big shot like Long Do, could be easily discerned just by looking at his aura. It was like a big tiger that could devour a person at any time, and a little kitten that pretended to be a big tiger. They could distinguish the real from the fake by instinct. Also, that flash of murderous intent just now really made people feel like they were in an ice cave. This was definitely not something that an ordinary cosplayer could do. It was something that only a man who had truly experienced blood and fire could do. However, before Otaku Wong could finish his sentence, Ryudo shook his head vigorously and said, "No, I'm not." It was impossible for him to admit it. He would never admit it even if he was beaten to death. If you're not Ryudo Kiryu himself, then you're... I'm just a fan of Ryudo Kiryu, just like the cosplayers here. Forget it. Since I'm going to act, I'll act until the end. After secretly sighing in his heart, in order to save his last bit of face, Ryudo could only pretend to be righteous and continue speaking. Everyone, what you learned from Extreme Secret Booklet, Dark City. Yoshiyuki Records. Is it really Ryuto Kiryu himself? No, it's not like that. Before the others could react, Ryuto shook his head. What kind of person is the real Ryuto Kiryu? He is an open and above-board person, a person who is not afraid of struggle, a true man, a hero who walks in the dark, an underground hero who is not recognized by the world, a dragon who chases after the dark. Let me ask. Speaking of this, Ryuto continued in a heavy tone. How could such a hero in the darkness want others to write such a book to brag about his achievements? This must be a kind of trouble for Ryuto boss. He doesn't want this to happen. Good. What he said seems to make sense. Hearing this, the audience below the stage couldn't help but nod their heads. And the three judges also began to ponder with a thoughtful expression. It had to be said that when the cosplayer on stage spoke seriously, he gave off the feeling of being Tongsheng Ryudo himself. Although that was impossible, he would never admit it even if he was beaten to death. So our understanding of Ryudo boss shouldn't be superficial. We shouldn't only remember his glorious deeds. We shouldn't blindly imitate his rumored behavior. But we should learn his spirit. Learn the spirit that even if the world doesn't accept me, I will still move forward. Suddenly, Ryuto raised his head slightly, put his hands behind his back, and posed a posture of a master who was pointing at his back, commonly known as a posture used for showing off. However, after hearing his commentary, the judges by the stage, the audience, and the cosplayers backstage seemed to feel the heroic spirit hidden deep under the surface of the water. The corners of their eyes were slightly moist. What a great hero in the darkness. If their understanding of Ryuto before was limited to the exaggerated deeds on the internet. But now, after hearing Ryuto's speech, they gradually understood the spirit of the Rulon Group, second-generation leader. They felt the heroic spirit that soared to the sky. Even if the world doesn't accept me, I will still move forward. Handsome, too handsome. This wasn't the empty handsome of those foppish idols. And it wasn't the kind of scumbag handsome that said, "My is very big, bear with it." It was the kind of handsomeness that even if the world didn't accept him, he still had to walk on the streets with his head held high. He still did everything with a clear conscience. Extreme Tao is the darkness of the underground. Since that's the case, I will embrace the darkness. How solemn and stirring, how valiant, and what kind of man was he? For a moment, everyone around the stage was deeply attracted by Long Do's words. They were attracted by the tragic aura of the legendary dark hero that he spoke of. Clap, 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 clap. After a long silence, some people couldn't help but clap. Clap, clap, clap. Clap, 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 clap. Clap, 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 clap. Unknowingly, the sound of applause began to faintly spread out like waves. A few seconds later, it turned into thunderous applause that shook the entire venue. It was as if the ceiling of the Akihabara New Hall would shatter. When the applause surged, Immortal Otaku stood up with tears streaming down his face and shouted to Ryuto, "Good! Well said! This is the real Ryuto Kiryu cosplayer. You deserve to be the champion of the Ryuto Kiryu cosplay competition." Oh! Champion! 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 After hearing the words of the big three, the rest of the audience also began to become restless. They all shouted that the champion who imitated Ryuto should be awarded to Ryuto himself. Indeed, compared to the group of ordinary cosplayers who only imitated Ryuto's appearance and behavior, the last contestant clearly grasped the will and spirit of the Extreme Tao boss. This realm made all the participating cosplayers blush with shame, and all the audience and judges were shocked from the bottom of their hearts. Under this enthusiastic atmosphere, there was no need to compete in the following competition, and the champion was thus decided. Not long after, Ryuto, who originally only wanted to show off and quickly run away, was surrounded by a group of Ryuto cosplayers. Under the gaze of tens of thousands of people, he awkwardly stretched out his hand and received the cosplay Ryuto Kiryu. Winner medal from Immortal Otaku. 3, 2, 1 Eggplant. Eggplant. Click. With the last dozens of Ryuto cosplayers on the stage, the professional photographer pressed the trigger on the dozens of Ryuto Kiryu on the stage, and also this precious photo of the first Ryuto Kiryu cosplay competition. In the center of the photo, the man who was using the cosplay Ryudo Kiryu winner medal to cover his face, not letting his face be photographed in the photo, looked somewhat embarrassed. But everyone knew that he was the winner of this competition, the king of Ryudo cosplay, and also left his own legend in Akihabara. Just like that, a chaotic storm came to an end. Of course, when the two of them sat in the car and returned home, senior sister Yunyan's smiling face had already stiffened. He is an open and aboveboard person, a person who is not afraid of fighting, a real man, a hero who walks in the dark, pft. Ha 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 ha. Sorry, I can't continue. At this time Yunyan, who was sitting next to Ryudo, was imitating her boyfriend's speech while laughing. It's over this time. What stupid thing did I do? It's too shameful. At this time, Ryudo was sitting in the car holding his head, with an embarrassed expression. Indeed, thinking about it carefully, what Long Do did just now was indeed quite shameless. He actually bragged about himself in front of hundreds of people, saying things like a real man, a hero who walks in the dark, an underground hero who is not recognized by the world. Just thinking about it made one feel that he was shameless. The most embarrassing thing was that Ryudo won the Ryudo Cosplay Championship. I cosplayed me, and won the cosplay championship. Who am I? Who am I cosplaying? Who is me? Who is cosplaying me? Suddenly, the entanglement in Ryudo's heart seemed to have become a classical philosophical question, making him feel that he didn't know what to say. But there was one thing that must be solved. Ryudo must not let today's incident be leaked. Even if it was leaked to Colored Glaze and Dunya, if those two women knew, they would definitely laugh at Ryudo for a lifetime. So Ryudo raised his head and counted to Yunyan next to him. That Yunyan, today's incident will be a secret between us. Don't tell anyone, okay? That. Yunyan smiled and pretended to think for a while, then smiled and said, not necessarily. It depends on your performance tonight. Performance tonight? You mean? Didn't I tell you? Tonight, I'll wear all kinds of cosplay clothes for you to see. You have to help me get the feeling of those characters. If you do well, I won't tell anyone about what happened today. Huh, that's right. There was such a good thing today. Hearing this, Ryudo hurriedly nodded at the same time. His face showed a slightly wretched expression. After all, it was late at night, and his girlfriend wore all kinds of cosplay clothes for him to see. This was really, he would laugh in his dreams tonight. Chapter 264. Speaking of Yunyan, from a certain perspective she was Ryudo's favorite woman. Especially in all aspects of being a girlfriend, Yunyan was almost a perfect existence. She was the type that as long as it was a man, he would definitely be fascinated by her, and would be willing to kneel under her skirt. After all, not only was she beautiful, but she was also gentle and considerate. Her figure was also very good, and she had a strange charm that could cause the downfall of a city. The most important thing was, Yunyan knew how to play. This knew how to play meant that she knew how to play in various senses. As long as it was something that she was interested in, she would try her best to try it. She was even very proactive and would not feel shy. For example, this time when she took the initiative to bring Ryudo to Akihabara to play, it was originally because Yunyan wanted to write a female lead who was proficient in cosplay in her novel, and thus became interested in cosplay. Since she became interested in cosplay, Yunyan naturally wanted to cosplay a variety of characters, so that she could find the feeling of writing. Of course, from a certain perspective, doing this was actually letting Ryudo off easy. After all, Yunyan was his official girlfriend. Which man wouldn't want to see his girlfriend wearing cute maid clothes, nurse clothes, or witch clothes? If he could feel a different touch and smell, then it would be even more. Hiss. Therefore, on that night, after Ryudo and Yunyan returned from Akihabara, they directly went to Tsutsumira-Betsuen. Different from Tsutsumira-Betsuen, which was the main family's Tsutsumira-Betsuen. Tsutsumira-Betsuen was Yunyan's own residence, which meant that her parents were not usually here. But even so, there were many bodyguards and housekeepers in the courtyard. On one hand, they usually protected the young lady, and on the other hand, they played a certain role in monitoring. However, this small trouble naturally couldn't stop the current Ryudo. In order to see Yunyan's cosplay, he could easily cross a mountain of knives and a sea of flames. This was the power of LSP. When Yunyan entered from the main door, Ryudo quickly climbed in from the side railing of the courtyard. After avoiding all the surveillance cameras and bodyguards, he arrived directly below Yunyan's room. Seeing that there was no one around, Ryudo reached out and grabbed the drainage pipe beside the house. Like a flower thief, he jumped and flipped, and quickly climbed into Yunyan's room. Speaking of which, this was the first time that Ryudo entered Yunyan's boudoir. As the young lady of the Tsutsumirabetsuin group, although Yunyan's room was not as luxurious as the one in Tsutsumirabetsuin, it was still extremely elegant and comfortable. The beautiful blinds were embroidered with a light cloud-like window screen. Beside the bed was a pure white desk with a laptop on it. Beside it was a huge bookshelf full of books. Obviously, this was where Yunyan usually wrote her novels. The entire room was decorated with a fresh and pleasant aqua color. The soft bed was covered with a gorgeous tassel curtain, and there were a few small dolls at the head of the bed. The most unbearable thing was that as soon as Ryudo entered the room, he smelled a familiar fragrance. Every girl's fragrance was different, and these fragrances were part of their feminine charm. For example, Colored Glaze's body always had a simple and elegant fragrance of flowers and wood. It was like the fragrance of flowers, but also like the fragrance of wood. Besides being elegant, it also gave people a feeling of calmness. It made people want to hug her when they were tired and inhale to their heart's content. On the other hand, Dunia's body had a wonderful fragrance of vodka mixed with milk. Maybe it was because she drank vodka all year round, or maybe it was because alcohol flowed in Mao Xiong's body. This kind of burly man and milky Lolita's smell was very addictive. As for Yunyan, she was pure, the fragrance of hormones. Her body's fragrance was really hard to describe. It was not the fragrance of flowers, nor the fragrance of wine or milk. It was a pure feminine fragrance. This kind of smell could only be smelled on a woman's body. It could not be found anywhere else. It was said that the smell of hormones could emit a scent that attracted the opposite sex. If this was the case, then Yunyan might be one of the women with the strongest hormonal scent. This was because just by smelling the scent on her body, it could cause people to have very direct primitive thoughts. From this perspective, Yunyan and Ayam were actually the same type of witch. It was just that one was an angel, and the other was a demon. They were on opposite ends of the scale, but there was no difference in their lethality to men. Thinking of this, Ryudo couldn't help but pick up his girlfriend's pillow from the bed and put it in front of his nose to smell it. Then his whole body trembled, looking like a living gentleman. Of course, this was purely out of curiosity. He wanted to find out what elements were involved in the smell of hormones. There was absolutely no hint of perversion in it. Absolutely not, probably not. Ah, you came in so quickly. Why are you holding my pillow? When Ryudo was smelling the pillow like a fool, Yunyan also walked in from the main door. Then, she looked at his actions and asked in confusion. Ahem, aren't you going to change clothes? Hurry up, I can't wait. In order to cover up his gentlemanly behavior just now, Ryudo hurriedly showed an excited look. That's true. Then you wait here for a while, I'll be right there, hee. After throwing a flirtatious look, Yunyan walked toward the large cloakroom next to the room. At this time, there were a lot of cosplay costumes there. It made people sigh that it's good to be rich, and it's even better to have a rich girlfriend. Oh, what will senior sister Yunyan wear in a while? It's really exciting. When Yunyan ran to the cloakroom to change clothes, Ryudo was lying on her soft bed and rolling around, looking like a pure young man who had never been on a woman's bed. Speaking of cosplay costumes, what do you like the most? For Ryudo, he should like maids the most. That kind of job of serving people with cute girls and costumes can really arouse endless fanciful thoughts of men. Coincidentally, senior sister Yunyan, who walked out of the cloakroom 10 minutes later, was dressed in a very seductive female outfit. Servant. Poser. Is this an angel? Did the maid angel come? When Yunyan walked out with a cold expression, Ryudo couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. At this time, Yunyan was wearing a standard black and white maid costume. The black inner shirt tightly wrapped around her slender body. The white lace skirt only reached her thighs, and there was a big bow on the waist that emphasized the girl's slender waist. Originally, a maid costume was one of the elements of Mo. At this time, Yunyan's maid costume was short, and a pair of white halter stockings swayed her legs, giving people a feeling of shining white. What's more, from the bottom of the skirt to the top of the halter stockings, it just so happened to expose a piece of snow-white skin, as well as the outline of the thighs that was wrapped by the stockings. It can be said to be a perfect absolute domain. Absolute territory referred to the space between the girl's knee-length socks and short skirt, where one could vaguely see her thighs. That vaguely discernible beautiful skin allowed one to see their dreams, so it was called a sacred and inviolable territory. Originally, Yunyan's figure was the tallest among the three girls, so her legs were naturally the longest. Coupled with the white halter stockings and the short skirt absolute domain, it made people want to lie down on the spot and become the carpet under her feet. Beautiful, beautiful, really beautiful. At this moment, senior sister Yunyan was wearing a set of maid attire. Her cloud-like brown hair was tied into a neat high ponytail. Coupled with the cold and arrogant expression on her face, it really made people unable to stop themselves from looking at her. And, wait, why does the maid have such an expression? It seems like she treats the master as trash. Generally speaking, maids are not submissive. They will do whatever they are told to do. Why is Yunyan acting as a maid like this? Just when Ryudo looked at the maid Yunyan with a puzzled look, she frowned and said sternly, "Hey, you, what are you doing lying on Miss Bed? Pervert." Logically speaking, this is Yunyan's own room, and the bed is also her own bed, but Yunyan said that it is Miss Bed. So that's the case. Is it such a setting? Her current maid role is playing the maid of Yunyan and Tsukumi. Unlike Colored Glaze, Yunyan did not have a personal maid following her. So at this time, Miss put herself in a role similar to 16 Nights in Dancing costume, and began to angrily scold the stinky man who was lying on Miss Bed. Yunyan's acting was not bad. At least he could feel her momentum of looking at men as trash. From a certain point of view, it was really similar to dancing costume. Since Yunyan wanted to put on an act, then Longdo naturally would not refuse to accompany her. So he sneered and said, "Humph, with my relationship with your miss, I can go to her bed if I want to. Even if your miss is on the bed, I will do it without hesitation." When he said without hesitation, Ryudo slightly curled his lips. Obviously, this sentence had a double meaning. After all, the word on had a deeper meaning. After hearing this sentence, the maid Yunyan's face turned a little red, but she still angrily said, "Disgusting. Disgusting. You stinky men. All you think about is these messy things all day long. Humph. I don't want Miss to be sullied by you." As Yunyan spoke, she put her hands on her waist and put on a superior posture while looking at Ryudo, who was lying on Miss Bed. This kind of superior posture, and her service profession as a maid, produced a strange contrast. Well, how to put it? It would make the person who liked it feel very good. Coincidentally, Ryudo was the kind of person who liked it. Although he was not a masochist, who could reject such a beautiful and cute maid who looked at her master like he was trash. Thus, when he heard Yunyan's words, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. Then he stretched out his hand and directly pulled this tsundere maid onto the bed. Chapter 265. Plop. Following this soft sound, the cute little maid was brought to the bed by the domineering extreme Dao young master. The moment she was pulled to the bed, the maid Yunyan couldn't help but shout, Let go. Stinky man. I want revenge. Although I like your big miss, I also like you." Without waiting for the maid Yunyan to finish her words, Ryudo whispered softly in her ear, and at the same time, he kissed her round earlobe. Oh, after being hit in the face by such a straightforward ball, Yunyan suddenly became soft, and her whole body became soft. So she also obediently fell into Ryudo's arms, smiled and said, "You really know how to coax girls." Usually, You have a lot of sweet words for other girls. Occasionally, but the number of sweet words for you is definitely the most. Pfft. Ha 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 ha. It seems like this is the case. Yunyan also knew that Ryudo had two other women, but with the temperament of colored glaze and Dunya, they usually didn't play so much when they were with Ryudo. After being intimate for a while, Yunyan slowly got up from the bed, pointed at her outfit and asked, "Stop joking. What do you think of my outfit?" "Very good." Ryudo immediately gave a thumbs up, smiled and said, "Especially the setting of the arrogant and poisonous maid and the white garter stockings, it's simply amazing." Gulp. Speaking of this, the dragon head couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva, and looked at Yunyan's legs wrapped in the long garter stockings. The so-called garter stockings were actually a kind of stockings. It was just that in the past, when stocking technology was not developed, nylon stockings without a corset design would easily slide down. Therefore, things like suspenders were developed. To put it bluntly, it was just a design to fix the stockings. Logically speaking, with the improvement of the design of stockings and the development of some small products similar to stocking glue, the situation of women slipping down when wearing stockings had decreased a lot. Therefore, garter stockings should also be retired from the stage of history. However, this did not happen. At some point, garter stockings became a symbol of femininity. Unlike stockings and pantyhose without suspenders, suspender stockings were like the straps behind a bra because of the two suspenders. They became a special prop that attracted people's interest. In this day and age, socks were not necessarily for wearing. They could be worn for use. After all, a woman's long and slender legs were the most attractive part of a man. Coupled with the two straight straps of the garter stockings, it was as if the straps were used as threads on the graceful thighs, making it easier for people to see the three-dimensional structure of the thighs. And the most important thing was that the straps of the garter stockings had a hint of going up, up and up. It made people feel as if they could go up along the straps, and their consciousness would dive into the top of the garter stockings and go to the mysterious secret garden. Therefore, the legs wearing garter stockings were beautiful and had a certain suggestive effect. It could make people feel that the legs were very beautiful. If the legs were white and long, the bones and flesh were well proportioned, and the owner of the legs was a great beauty, then it would be even more beautiful. There was no doubt that Yunyan perfectly met the above characteristics, so Ryudo couldn't help but look at her legs wearing white garter stockings. This was a very normal situation. At this time, the maid was lying on the bed with her legs slightly bent, supporting her face with her elbows. This posture could perfectly show the curves of her body. After noticing Ryudo's gaze on her legs, Yunyan was not pretentious, but asked with a smile, "So you like this? Is this the so-called stocking fetish?" Is it? I can't say for sure. In short, I am attracted to it." Facing this question, Ryudo was a little embarrassed. After all, it was still a little embarrassing to be obsessed with legs wearing stockings. But Yunyan was more considerate than Ryudo. She actually stretched out her legs generously and signaled to Ryudo with her eyes that he could touch it if he liked. "Really? Can I really do this?" Looking at the pair of beautiful legs wearing white stockings in front of him, although Ryudo thought, "This is not good," in his heart, his hand honestly held Yunyan's slender jade foot and curiously played up and down. As early as when he was driving to the Tokyo Emperor Hotel, Ryudo had some strange thoughts about Yunyan's feet. Her moderately sized feet were very delicate. The shape of the ankle and instep were extremely beautiful. Coupled with the white stockings covering it, it made people want to hold it in their hands and play with it carefully. Now Ryudo finally got what he wanted. Oh, this is Yunyan's feet. Not bad. It was not the first time Ryudo saw and touched a beauty's jade foot. In fact, he had seen or touched this part of his harem of 3 people. Dunya's feet were the smallest. One hand could almost wrap around it. The feeling of being small and exquisite was like a carefully made doll. Colored Glaze's feet were slightly bigger, but the shape was very delicate. The beautiful lines from the tip of the foot to the ankle gave endless fanciful thoughts. And because Yunyan's figure was the tallest and her body shape was also the mature type, her jade feet were naturally the largest among the 3. However, senior sister Yunyan's feet were still very beautiful. Beside the round and protruding ankle joint, there was a pair of slightly sunken ankle sockets, which maximized the bone aesthetic of the ankle. Coupled with the well-proportioned bone and flesh ratio, it was unforgettable for anyone who saw it for the rest of their life. Ryudo heard before that in some old gentleman countries, there was a beauty contest that specialized in the beauty of the ankle. If that kind of gentleman contest still existed, then Yunyan could definitely easily win the championship. Have you touched enough? I'm going to change into the next set of clothes. Just when Ryudo, the young gentleman, was sighing good, while he reached out to admire Yunyan's feet and legs wrapped in stockings, Yunyan finally couldn't help but remind him. Although she knew that Ryudo liked her maid costume and white silk garter stockings, maid costume was only one of the cosplay costumes. There were dozens of clothes in the cloakroom waiting for Yunyan to change into. Ryudo had no choice but to let go of the beautiful leg and watch Yunyan walk toward the cloakroom. But this wasn't a bad thing, because not long after, Yunyan walked back in a white nurse uniform. Oh, this is not bad. Looking at Yunyan, who was wearing a nurse's skirt, a nurse's cap, and a pair of white pantyhose, Ryudo suddenly had the idea of asking her to give him an injection, or he could give her an injection himself. Just like this, the two played the nurse and patient game for a while. Yunyan then changed into the witch costume, policewoman costume, Lolita costume, flight attendant costume, and other common cosplay costumes. She also changed into some famous ACG characters' cosplay costumes. Every time she changed her clothes, Longdo would seriously comment on it. Then he would comment on whether senior sister Yunyan's clothes matched her stockings, whether the stockings were too thick, and so on. Needless to say, only Yunyan was willing to play with Ryudo like this. If it was colored glaze or Dunya, Ryudo would have been kicked and beaten as soon as he stretched out his hand. When Yunyan finally excitedly tried on all the clothes, it was already the middle of the night. And when she tried on a bunch of clothes, she felt a little sweaty. So she ran to the bathroom to take a shower, changed into a nightgown and walked out. Phew, today was really fun, too interesting. After coming out of the bathroom, Yunyan laughed while using the towel in her hand to dry her wet hair. Her long brown hair, which was usually soft and fluffy like a cloud, was now wet and clumped together. Longdo had never seen such a scene before. Although it was not the first time he saw a beauty coming out of the shower, the last time he saw it was Dunya drying her wet hair. When it came to displaying the charm of a woman, a loli was not on the same level as a mature woman. Yunyan's posture when she came out of the bath was indeed much more beautiful. It made people clearly feel that she was a woman and not a girl. Dong 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 dong. Seeing Yunyan in a soft nightgown walking towards him, Ryudo felt his heart beating violently. Indeed, the normal Yunyan and the Yunyan who changed so many costumes were very attractive, but the current Yunyan in her nightgown displayed her charm to the extreme. Her bare feet, as white as jade, stepped on the carpet in the room. Her calves and thighs without stockings still looked flawless. From the soft silk nightgown, one could see large patches of white skin on her arms, back, and neck. Walla lala. When Yunyan came out of the bathroom and sat in front of the dressing table to dry her hair, Ryudo kept staring at her like an idiot who had never seen a woman before. As a matter of fact, it was indeed so. Beauties like Yunyan, who possessed a fatal level of enticement to men, were probably less than 5 in the current world. One of them was even a man-eating flower like Yongji. Looking and looking, when Yunyan finally dried her hair and walked towards the bed, Ryudo reacted and jumped up from the bed. He said awkwardly, "Sorry, it's late, I should go back." Because he was just engrossed in watching, Ryudo didn't react, and now it was already this time. After all, now that Yunyan was ready to wash up and sleep, he was still in her room, which was more or less suspicious of being a hooligan. People can be romantic, but can't be dirty. This was Ryudo's principle. However, just as Ryudo stood up and was about to leave like a gentleman, Yunyan suddenly pushed him forward and directly pushed him onto the bed. Yunyan, you. Just seeing so many of my costumes and touching so many stockings of different thicknesses, Do you feel a little uncomfortable? After pushing Long Do onto the bed, Yunyan also pounced on him. She revealed a charming smile that was different from her usual self as she whispered into his ear. Do you want it? Tonight it's okay. Chapter 266. Generally speaking, when a woman says, do you want it? If it's tonight, it's okay. When she says this, she probably didn't mean to ask if he wanted to eat supper tonight. Ryudo naturally understood what Yunyan meant. Otherwise, he wouldn't be naive but really stupid. Speaking of which, among the harem trio, Yunyan and Ryudo's relationship was the most intimate, because Yunyan was the most daring. In the 3 stages of love, which were kiss, caress, and sleep together, the colored glaze only reached A. Dunya didn't even reach A, and Yunyan even passed B. When Ryudo touched her feet and legs, Yunyan didn't refuse. Instead, she seemed to find it very interesting. Later on, when Ryudo boldly and shamelessly touched the pair of cute slimes, Yunyan didn't express any displeasure. That kind of charm that could cause the downfall of countries and cities, combined with the mature figure of a big sister that was like a peach, exuding a fatal attraction. And what made this attraction even more terrifying was that Yunyan was the kind of person who was willing to take the initiative to be intimate with others. Just like now, although she was a genuine, pure girl, this didn't stop Yunyan from taking the initiative. Because her personality was like this, daring to try all kinds of new things, and also liked to enjoy all kinds of enjoyment. Regarding the fact that he was pushed down by Yunyan, Ryudo felt his mind go blank for a moment, and at the same time, his breathing suddenly quickened. At this time, Yunyan had just finished showering. The strong smell of hormones on her body mixed with the fragrance of the shower gel, coupled with the soft silk nightgown. This beauty's charm was displayed to the extreme. What's more, this great beauty even asked, do you want it? A question that couldn't possibly have a second answer, so it would be strange if he could resist. Thus, without even thinking, Long Do brought over a slave. He flipped over and placed Senior Yunyan on the bed. Then, he propped up the pillow with his hand and looked at her eyes that carried a blurred expression. Yunyan, can I really do it? But be gentle. I haven't done it before. I heard it's a bit painful at first. Okay, I'll be gentle. Finally, the day has finally arrived. I can finally become a real man. Looking at Yunyan lying on the bed with a playful expression, Ryudo suddenly felt like crying. After mentally preparing himself, Ryudo slightly lowered his head and planned to start this hot night with a passionate chirp. However, just as this pair of lovers was about to take a new step, a light knock came from Yunyan's door. Damn, what the hell? Instantly, Ryudo's body bounced off Yunyan's body and awkwardly sat to the side. Yunyan also frowned slightly and asked with an unhappy tone. Who is it? Allah, you're not asleep yet, right? It's Mom, I'm coming in. At this time, Yunyan's mother, Suki Rizen's voice came from outside the door. Mom, why would she? Phew, no choice. Hearing her mom's voice, Yunyan hurriedly lifted the blanket and signaled for Ryudo to hide inside. While she lay down beside Ryudo, picked up a book from the bedside table, and pretended to be reading on the bed, and then picked up the remote to open the door. Yunyan's door was an electronic lock that could be opened remotely, so there was no need to get off the bed to open the door. 2 seconds after Ryudo hurriedly crawled under the blanket, Zhenqin opened the door and walked in, walking towards Yunyan's bedside. After coming to the bedside, Zhenqin smiled and said to her daughter, Still reading? I hope I didn't disturb you. You can say that. Why did you suddenly come over? I went to Madame Kudo's place to have a tea party tonight, and it happened to be near here, so I couldn't be bothered to go back, and decided to stay here for a night to accompany my cute daughter. Saying this, a relaxed smile appeared on Zhenqin's face as if saying, Are you happy? Are you having a good time? If it was any other time, Yunyan would definitely be very happy if her mom came over to accompany her. But today was different. Yunyan was about to step onto a new level with her boyfriend, but who knew that Zhenqin would suddenly come and mess things up? causing her to have a strange expression. As for Ryuto, who was hiding under the blanket, it was even more awkward. What's going on? What's going on? I was being intimate with my girlfriend in her room, but my mother-in-law suddenly came and blocked me in my girlfriend's blanket? This situation was very awkward for Ryuto, and also very scary. After all, he couldn't imagine what Genshin's expression would be if she found out that he was hiding in her daughter's bed. But at this moment, something even scarier happened. As Genshin spoke, she actually sat down on Yunyan's bed and smiled. How about I sleep here with you tonight? We haven't slept together in a long time. Hiss. The moment she heard this, Yunyan shivered, and Ryuto, who was hiding behind her, also shivered. The two could be said to be in sync. What a joke, sleep together. As long as Genshin lifts the blanket, no one will be able to sleep tonight. This isn't good. After feeling the crisis, a drop of cold sweat fell from Yunyan's smooth forehead, and she said awkwardly, "Why isn't it good? Didn't we often sleep together before?" "That's true, but today I have a cold, and I'm afraid of infecting you. Achoo." In order to strengthen her persuasion, Yunyan pretended to sneeze cutely. If it was any other time, Ryuto would definitely be attracted by the sound of the sneeze, but now he didn't have the mood to do so. Instead, he paid full attention to the second mother-in-law's actions. "Please, please don't come over." He didn't know if Ryuto's prayer was effective, or if Yunyan's sneeze was quite realistic. When Genshin heard that, she said, "Then you should rest well tonight. I'll sleep in the guest room next door. I won't disturb you." After rubbing Yunyan's head, Genshin leisurely opened the door and walked to the guest room next door. Phew. Suddenly, Ryuto breathed a sigh of relief. He poked his head out of the blanket, reached out and hugged Yunyan's slender waist, and said with a smile, "This is really dangerous. I was almost caught, hee." Indeed, I didn't expect Mom to come back at this time. After holding Ryuto's hand, Yunyan said regretfully, "But it seems that we can't do it tonight. Mom is sleeping in the small guest room next door. If there is any noise, it will disturb her." Although the soundproofing of the Tsutsumirabetsuin room was good, after all, it was late at night, and the surroundings were very quiet. If the two of them did it in the room, it would be strange if Genshin, who lived next door, couldn't hear it. But if they covered their mouths and didn't make any sound, the two of them wouldn't feel good enough. They would feel very sullen, so they might as well not do it. That's the only way. So miserable. Ryuto naturally knew this, so he also nodded bitterly, but the fire in his chest didn't go down. How to put it, in fact, since Yunyan changed her clothes, Ryuto had been very angry. Later, after Yunyan made it clear that she wanted to help him, Ryuto's fire burned even more vigorously. To use an exaggerated analogy, Ryuto was like a volcano that was about to erupt. If there was no vent, then he could only wait for the boiling magma inside to slowly calm down. Anyone who had experienced such a situation would know that this process was very unpleasant. It was like the feeling of being forced back halfway through a sneeze. Seeming to feel Ryuto's sullenness, Yunyan first pondered, and then said to Ryuto, who was about to get up and leave, "How about this? It's already so late, you should stay here tonight." But in my current situation, if I stay here, it's a bit torturous. If it was a normal day, being able to sleep in the same bed with Yunyan, even if it was just sleeping together, was a great enjoyment for Ryuto. But the problem was that now Ryuto's fire had been greatly aroused by her, and it was in the ultimate state of overclocking. Sleeping with her was not enjoyment but torture. It was like a person who had been hungry for several days was placed in front of him. But the meat couldn't be eaten, and he could only sleep with the meat. Who could stand this? However, Yunyan whispered in his ear, "I know. Don't worry. I will help you solve it so that you can sleep peacefully." "What? Help me solve it? What do you mean?" Beep. Before Ryuto could react, Yunyan picked up the remote control on the bedside table and pressed the button to turn off the lights. The next moment, the room filled with the delicate fragrance of a young girl suddenly fell into darkness, and for a moment it became pitch black. Then, a rustling sound came from the bed. Ryuto felt the quilt suddenly moved, and a warm body lifted the quilt and went under. Yunyan, just lie down. I read this method from a book. I don't know if it can be done. Anyway, let's give it a try. Book. Read it from a book. Give it a try. This is... Oh. Just when Ryudo didn't react to what Yunyan was saying, he suddenly felt his body heat up, and the action in the sixth last paragraph of chapter 95 was reproduced in this small quilt. So it's like this. Yunyan. Amazing. When he was enveloped by a feeling that he had never experienced before, Ryudo couldn't help but take a deep breath, and felt that his whole body fell into a bottomless abyss. Chapter 267. Hot dogs were a very normal way of making sausages. Speaking of hot dogs, I believe everyone is familiar with them. But how exactly are hot dogs made? Let's let Yunyan take everyone to understand. The specific method of making a hot dog was to use 2 pieces of white, round, and soft bread to clamp the sausages that have been roasted to make them hot. Then, smear a little slippery sauce on them, and rub them left and right so that the sausages and bread would fully absorb the sauce. Speaking of which, this was a commoner's delicacy that was simple to make and tasted great. Senior sister Yunyan, as a young miss, had never made a hot dog before. She had only read about how to make a hot dog in a book. Today she decided to use it on a whim. But from the way she rushed to the bathroom to take a shower, this dish was not easy to make from a certain perspective. She still had to wear an apron. Yunyan, are you okay? I'm okay. I was just shocked. It's amazing, like a water faucet suddenly exploded. Sorry. It's okay. It's a new experience, and it's quite helpful for writing novels. Thank you for your hard work. After holding Yunyan in his arms, Ryudo kissed her forehead, and then the two fell asleep in each other's arms. That night, Ryudo slept very well. The next day, when he woke up, he was even more refreshed. He was full of energy, as if he had just completed some kind of trial. Is this the feeling of having a girlfriend? Goodbye, good brother. After getting up, Ryudo looked at his right hand and nodded solemnly, as a final farewell to his bachelor life for the past 10 years. Oh, good morning. Not long after, Yunyan, who was lying next to him, also woke up, and then casually stretched. Seeing her graceful curves when she stretched, Ryudo sighed again. For a moment, he could not believe that he was able to become a lover with such a beauty. How to describe it? Ryudo and Yunyan were now on a new level, but not completely on it. They tried some new things, but not completely at the end of it. But no matter what, last night's strange experience made Ryudo very happy. At the same time, he also saw Yunyan's side that he would not normally see, and it was extremely shocking. Although Longdo knew from the beginning that senior sister Yunyan was very bold, he didn't expect her to be bold to this extent. She was clearly a young girl, but she directly skipped the novice stage and practiced the kind of senior technique that only talented women could master. So far, only Yunyan could master this kind of skill. Colored Glaze and Dunya did not have this kind of talent, and if Ryudo asked them to do it, he would probably be killed on the spot. It did not matter whether they had the talent or not. Therefore, even if Yunyan was not proficient in this kind of skill, it was enough to make Ryudo admire her. In the end, he was defeated by her great heart. Speaking of which, other than the fact that senior sister Yunyan was quite bold, there was also the fact that she really liked Longdo, which was why she wanted to make Longdo feel comfortable. Thinking of this, Ryudo felt warm in his heart. After all, having such a cute and proactive girlfriend was really a great joy in life. What's wrong? Why are you staring at me in a daze early in the morning? Are you still thinking about what happened last night? When being stared at by Ryudo, Yunyan, who was sitting in front of the dressing table and doing her hair, could not help but ask with a smile. While she was doing her hair, Yunyan raised her long and slender hands behind her back. Because she was only wearing a simple set of underwear, and the nightgown from last night had been washed, her smooth, white, and hairless underarms attracted Longdo's attention. Thus, Longdo swallowed his saliva and smiled awkwardly. That more or less. If you like it, I will help you many times. don't stare at me like this. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yunyan, you are really an angel. When Long Do heard senior sister Yunyan's casual reply, which contained a myriad of flirtatious emotions, he instantly felt as if he had turned into light. He wanted nothing more than to put on his underwear, throw on a bedsheet, and fly out to save the world. In this way, Ryudo jumped out of the window with a good mood. He jumped out of the bedroom that brought him countless beautiful memories, then quietly slipped to the street, waiting for Yunyan to come out to school. Not long after, Yunyan, who was neatly dressed in the first high school uniform, and her face returned to her usual gentle expression, walked out of the gate. This Yunyan was the Yunyan in Sakudari that the public was familiar with. But after last night, Long Do got to know the new Yunyan. He got to know what the Yunyan in the moon vision looked like. He was the only one in the world who could see it. Therefore, until the two arrived at the school gate of First High School, Ryudo was in a good mood, and so was Yunyan, who was walking beside him. You love me, I love you, XXXX sweet honey. She even hummed an inexplicably familiar melody as she walked, and it was like a magical sound that pierced the ears. While humming, Yunyan unconsciously reached out and hugged Ryudo's arm, like a little girl in love. The young man and woman in love seemed to only have eyes for each other. Usually, when Yunyan and Long Do were alone, small actions like holding hands, hugging each other's arms, or hugging each other's waist had become a habit for them. Especially after last night, the two of them had become even closer. However, they obviously didn't notice that they weren't alone. Instead, they were openly walking on the school road outside Dori No. 1 High School. There were at least 500 to 600 students in their field of vision. Therefore, this scene made many jaws drop in shock. Am I seeing things? That's Yunyan and Ryudo Kiryu. Seeing the two walking together intimately, and the girl hugging the boy's arm, most of the students who were about to go to school were stunned. A male student who was eating a sandwich while walking saw the scene, bit his finger, and threw the sandwich at the face of the student behind him. The student who was thrown a sandwich didn't have time to get angry. He just looked at Ryudo and Yunyan, and continued to walk until the sandwich fell to the ground. The sandwich that fell to the ground was stepped on by another student who saw this scene. He did a 90-degree split on the spot, and his crotch cracked. Of course, this was only a small incident that happened in a small area. From the time Long Do and Yunyan walked affectionately to the school gate, there were countless of blunders caused by excessive shock, such as falling, dropping things, bumping into each other, bumping into a tree, bumping into a telephone pole, drinking a drink into one's nostrils, and so on. There were simply too many to count. Because no one could imagine that such a shocking scene would happen early in the morning. A long time ago, Yunyan and Ryudo were involved in a scandal. It was that time when the two walked into the school side by side, which caused the first public outrage on the first high school BBS. But a scandal was just a scandal. In addition, there was the incident of Ryudo and Colored Glaze straightening their collars at the school gate, which diluted the reliability of the previous scandal. Gradually, no one talked about Ryudo and Yunyan anymore. But this morning, in such a public place, this man and woman had openly hugged each other's arms, doing the intimate actions that only a couple would do, chatting and laughing as they walked into the campus. For the boys and girls who liked Yunyan, today was undoubtedly the end of their world. For the boys and girls who liked Ryudo, the same logic applied. Extra, extra, extra. Ryudo Kiryu and Yunyan confirmed their relationship, and came to school early in the morning with their arms around each other's arms. From that moment onwards, an unprecedented storm of the century began to blow, quickly spreading to every corner of the first high school of Metropolis. Along with this earth-shattering topic, hundreds of photos of the two of them walking through the school gate from different angles also appeared on the first high school BBS. In most of the photos, Yunyan's face had the sweet smile of a girl in love. Her right hand was wrapped around Ryudo's left arm, and she even didn't care that half of her proud holy mountain was on her boyfriend's arm. How is this possible? I won't admit it. I won't admit this reality. When they saw this photo, who knows how many young boys and girls let out heart-wrenching cries. It must be known that Yunyan was a big idol in this school, especially with her natural mysterious charm and body that far exceeded that of a high school student. She attracted a bunch of fans. Although these fans usually didn't show off, they had always been silently paying attention to Yunyan and worshipping her as their goddess. But today, the goddess in their hearts came to school intimately with the school's demon king, the hooligan, and the two of them were so close to each other. Wasn't this asking for death? Of course, if Ryudo knew what they were thinking, he would probably only laugh coldly in his heart. This is considered close. Last night was close, so close that my entire body sank in. Under such a lively atmosphere, the first high school was especially lively. Almost everyone was talking about Ryudo and Yunyan's official relationship. However, where there was light, there would be shadows. If some people were happy, there would naturally be others who were unhappy. For example, the official team leader's wife, Kanzaki Colored Glaze, who was angered by Ryudo and Dunya's matter yesterday, and came over early in the morning to eat another big melon. Chapter 268. Early in the morning, in the Year 2 Class A classroom of the Dori First High School, an unprecedentedly low pressure was wreaking havoc. This low pressure was so strong that it was as if it wanted to turn the classroom into a Siberian ice field. Even the teacher subconsciously lowered his voice by several decibels during class. And the source of this low pressure was the scion sitting in the second-to-last row by the window, Colored Glaze Kanzaki. Ever since this scion from Kamiyoshi came to school, her expression had never been good. Although Colored Glaze usually had a very cold expression in school, being cold didn't equate to having an angry expression, nor did it equate to a Siberian low pressure. Displeased, very displeased, extremely displeased at this moment, Colored Glaze was sitting on her desk as she reached out for the ballpoint pen she always used and subconsciously scratched the surface of her desk. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The soft crunching sounds almost reached the ears of every student in the class, but everyone only dared to lower their heads and read their books. Even the teacher didn't dare to look in the scion's direction. Too scary, truly too scary. Everyone knew that Colored Glaze Kanzaki had a special identity, and that her aura was much stronger than the average high school students. But they didn't expect her to give off such a terrifying aura when she was angry. She was just sitting there, but it was enough to make everyone feel as if they were in hell. Colored Glaze in this state was just that terrifying. Miss, it can't be right? She's actually this angry because of that bastard Ryudo? Dancing Costume, who was also in Year 2 Class A like Kanzaki, naturally knew why Colored Glaze was so angry today. Without a doubt, it was related to this morning's incident between Ryudo and Yunyan. By the time the first class started, almost everyone in the school knew about the news. They all knew that the third-year school bell, the famous Yunyan flower, was already taken. Actually, when Dancing Costume saw that photo, she already knew that Kanzaki would be angry, but she didn't expect her to be so angry that she almost exploded on the spot. Colored Glaze liked Ryudo, and Dancing Costume knew this very well. But Dancing Costume also knew that Ryudo was dating Yunyan, and Kanzaki had tacitly agreed to it. This made Dancing Costume feel very strange. Colored Glaze clearly allowed Ryudo date Yunyan, so why was she so angry? The reason for this was actually very simple. To put it bluntly, I was the one who came first. Indeed, in this world, no one was more qualified to say this than Colored Glaze. From the beginning, Ryudo was the first to like Colored Glaze. He was the first to confess to Colored Glaze, the first to go through thick and thin with Colored Glaze, the first to visit Colored Glaze's home, the first to make a promise to Colored Glaze, the first to kiss Kanzaki. Why? I was here first. So why did he announce his relationship with Yunyan first? If that's the case, then wouldn't it seem like I'm the mistress? Kacha. Thinking of this, Colored Glaze's slender hand suddenly exerted force, and actually broke the ballpoint pen in her hand on the table. It was obvious how unhappy she was in her heart. Indeed, Colored Glaze did approve of Ryudo's idea of starting a harem, and also acknowledged that Yunyan and Dunya were qualified to serve one husband with her. But even so, Colored Glaze would never give up the position of main wife. Damn it, I really want to announce to everyone that Ryudo is my man. But I can't. Although Colored Glaze really wanted to declare her authority as the main wife, the current situation didn't allow her to do so. The reason was still the same, because the Kamiyoshi wouldn't allow the heir to the throne to fool around with men outside. Not only the Kamiyoshi wouldn't allow it, but the Yatsuki organization also wouldn't allow it. So even if Colored Glaze wanted to declare her sovereignty, she couldn't do so before solving the Yatsuki and Kamiyoshi problem. Irritated. The more she thought about it, the more irritated Colored Glaze felt, but she couldn't do anything. However, just as Colored Glaze was infuriated, Ryudo in the next classroom received a special text message. Beep 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 beep. Accompanied by a familiar sound from the phone, Ryudo took out the phone from his trouser pocket and clicked on the message. But the moment he saw the message, Ryudo immediately frowned and then stood up abruptly. This action startled the students and teachers of Grade 2 Class B. But she didn't care about the sudden silence in the classroom. Instead, she stood up and walked out without hesitation. What's going on? Everyone was stunned when they saw Long Do walk out of the classroom, as if there was no one around. However, due to Long Do's status and his reputation, no one dared to say anything. But after he walked out of the classroom, he made an even more exaggerated move. Da-da-da-da. Accompanied by a burst of hurried footsteps in the corridor, Ryudo pushed open the door of the second-year class next door. Hey. Isn't this Ryudo Kiryu? Seeing Ryudo suddenly push open the door during class time, the teachers and students of the second-year class A were stunned. What was even more exaggerated was that after entering the door, Long Do directly went to Lu Li's seat. Moreover, he stretched out his hand and pulled this dumbstruck young miss up from her seat. Finally, he quickly walked outside. All of this happened too quickly, in just a few seconds. Before anyone could react, Ryudo had already pulled Colored Glaze out of the classroom. The whole process looked like a bride snatching. After a few steps, Colored Glaze tried to shake off Ryudo's hand in surprise, and asked in an incredulous tone, Wait, what the hell are you doing? It had to be said that Ryudo's move just now was really shocking. He actually went straight into the next class during class, and pulled the young lady Colored Glaze out. If there was no reasonable explanation, then this incident would probably become the second explosive point of the day, enough to be on par with the Yunyan and Ryudo dating incident. But just as Colored Glaze was trying to struggle, Ryudo said seriously, Don't make trouble. Something happened to Lady Ruehue. We must immediately rush to Kamishiro Imperial Garden. Lady Ruehue, something happened to Mother? The moment she heard this sentence, Colored Glaze suddenly trembled. After all, she never dreamed that Ryudo pulled her out of class because of this. But in the next moment, Colored Glaze quickly thought of a strange point. Wait. Something happened to Mother. Why didn't I know? How did he know? Thinking of this, Colored Glaze couldn't help but show a puzzled expression. Ruehue Kaneshiro was Colored Glaze's biological mother, and logically speaking, the relationship between the two of them was the closest in the world. But now, something seemed to have happened to Ruehue, and Colored Glaze didn't know anything about it. But Ryudo got the information faster? This didn't make sense, did it? As if he knew what Colored Glaze was thinking, Ryudo took out his phone and showed her the message sent by Bunnyball from the cat house. There were only a few simple words on the message. It said, Madam fainted on the ground. Speed. Although it was only a few words, the content was enough to shock anyone who saw it. And it made Colored Glaze even more confused. What's going on? Why didn't I receive this message? Why did Bunnyball only send it to Ryudo, but not to me? I'm the young lady of Kamiyoshi. I'm Mother's daughter, right? At this moment, Ryudo pulled Colored Glaze out of the school while explaining. Actually, Madame Ruehue has been hiding something from you. She didn't want you to know, so Bunnyball naturally didn't inform you. Something has been hiding from me? What is it? After hearing this, Colored Glaze only felt her heart beat wildly. Ryudo's words combined with the message of Ruehue fainting just now. With her intelligence, it wasn't difficult to guess the worst answer. Madame Ruehue is actually seriously ill. She thinks that she doesn't have long to live, so she didn't want to tell you some things. Mother, she doesn't have long to live? In an instant, Colored Glaze felt dizzy as she walked. Her legs seemed to have lost their strength, and she fell forward unconsciously. But Colored Glaze didn't fall to the ground, but when she fell forward, Ryudo caught her. Hee. In the next second, Ryudo put his hands on her back and legs, and the young lady's slender body was carried up in a princess carry position. Don't forget, at this time, the two were still in school. Although it was still class time, there were still some figures around. If it were any other time, Luli would definitely not allow Long Do to do such an intimate action to her in public. But now she couldn't care less about it. How is it possible, Mother? Don't worry, listen to me carefully, okay? Ryudo naturally understood Colored Glaze's feelings when she heard the sudden news, but he smiled and said in Colored Glaze's ear, I just said, she thinks she doesn't have long to live. Do you understand what this means? Hearing this, Colored Glaze's head turned to Ryudo's direction and looked at the man with a surprised gaze. Ruehue doesn't have long to live. Ruehue thinks she doesn't have long to live. In between these two sentences, he only added thinks she doesn't have long to live. But the meaning was completely different. Difficult to say. After understanding Ryudo's meaning, Colored Glaze asked with trepidation, You mean, Mother can still be saved? She won't die? Of course. Hearing this, Ryudo showed a confident expression, then lowered his head, and gently kissed Colored Glaze's forehead. I bet on my Ryudo Kiryo's name, I will definitely let her live. Otherwise, wouldn't I have worked for nothing for the past few months? Thinking about the past few months of blood and tears, Ryudo couldn't help but feel like crying. Even more than Colored Glaze, he wanted to cry. Chapter 269. Ryudo had already expected that Kanzai Ruehue would fall ill and die, and it was bound to happen. According to the timeline of the original work, Ruehue would die a year after Ryudo kidnapped the Colored Glaze, which was a year after Ryudo's plot began. It was almost half a year from now. However, Ruehue didn't suddenly die. Her body should start to have various problems at this time, such as fainting or severe headaches from time to time. Therefore, Ryudo also specifically discussed with Ruehue that if Ruehue had any discomfort, she should immediately inform him, because this was an excellent opportunity for treatment. The only way to treat Ruehue's family inherited terminal disease was a kind of elixir in Ryudo's Krypton Gold Mall, Hooligan 100 Immortals pill. Although the name sounded like a joke, its effect was really good. The description of this elixir was one pill. All the diseases will disappear. The skin will be tender, and you will be a new person. It was like the kind of elixir that could be used to become an immortal after eating it. It was not comparable to ordinary mortal medicine. Of course, such a useful thing. The price was also quite reasonable. The first one cost 1 billion. This price was not expensive from an objective point of view, but it was also very cheap. After all, a thing that could cure all diseases, not to mention 1 billion, even if it was 10 billion or 100 billion, many people would rush to buy it. However, in order to save 1 billion yen, to buy this Hooligan 100 Immortals pill for Mrs. Ruehue, Ryudo had a hard time during this period. With such a large sum of money, even if Ryudo's Rulong Security Company could continue to make profits, it was not so easy for him to save it even if he often went to the Sai River fighting arena to play games and went out from time to time to rob the rich for himself. But fortunately, a young master named John Teddy accidentally helped Ryudo solve most of the problems. That's right, it's John. It's that John, the young master who accidentally had the same name as Father John. Then, the two of them colluded to plot against the Tsukuminari group, only to be punched in the neck by Ryudo. Although no one knew where John was now, the inheritance he left behind was still there, which was the 1 billion yen that Gao Yuan transferred out in batches. A few months ago, Ryudo had spent 300 million out of the 1 billion, but later on, he received the remaining 800 million. In addition to the hundreds of millions he had earned over the past few months, it was not a problem for him to gather 1 billion to buy the medicine. However, Ryudo still felt the pinch when he thought about how his 1 billion yuan was going to vanish in a moment. This was because this money was already enough for him to level up his attribute points twice. Sigh, I hope that Madame Hui will be able to return this 1 billion to me. She shouldn't be such a stingy person. Just as Ryudo brought colored glaze to the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, located in the outskirts of Tokyo, he couldn't help but think this in his heart. When the two of them skipped class and came to the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, it was still early in the morning. The main building of the Imperial Garden, that looked like a huge shrine, emitted a bright luster under the sun, looking very luxurious. Colored glaze was very familiar with the Imperial Garden, where she was born and grew up. However, due to the inconvenience of going to school after entering high school, colored glaze was arranged by Hui to live in the Kamishiro courtyard, and the time she returned home was also a lot less. Thinking about it carefully, colored glaze seemed to have become more and more estranged from her mother from that time. At first, colored glaze thought that it was because her mother had been busy in recent years, so she gradually became estranged from her. But from the current situation, it should be Hui's deliberate intention. Because she knew that she didn't have long to live. In order to not let her daughter be sad, Hui chose the stupidest method. As long as her daughter didn't like her, naturally she wouldn't be sad. Idiot! How can there be such an idiot? Thinking about this, colored glaze couldn't help but sigh deeply, and there was a faint mist floating in her eyes. In colored glaze's heart, her mother had always been incomparably wise, as if she could see through all the truths of the world, and nothing could be difficult for her. The kind of perfect woman who could always remain calm. But when it came to her daughter, Hui always seemed to do something that seemed very stupid. Perhaps this was the so-called caring makes a mess. As the car stopped at the side door of the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, Ryudo and colored glaze quickly jumped out of the car and walked towards the side door. At this time, there was already a familiar old figure waiting at the side door. But when he saw Lady Colored Glaze, he frowned slightly. After glancing at Colored Glaze, Cat House Bunny Ball looked at Ryudo with a somewhat angry gaze and questioned, Ryudo-kun, what is the meaning of this? From the beginning to the end, Hui's physical condition was a big secret that had to be hidden from Colored Glaze. And Ryudo also agreed to this condition to start a series of cooperation with Hui. But now, Ryudo acted on his own initiative and brought colored glaze here, completely disregarding the previous agreement. So it was no wonder that Bunny Ball was angry. But even though he felt Bunny Ball's anger, Ryudo only shrugged and smiled faintly. She has the right to know, and the right to stay here. But this isn't Lord Hui's wish. Sorry, I can't let you in. Speaking until here, this old butler who had guarded the Kamiyoshi for his entire life firmly shook his head and actually ordered Ryudo and colored glaze to leave. Hui had given a strict order to not let anyone under any circumstances let colored glaze know about her condition. So when Ryudo violated this agreement, he had already lost the right to cooperate with Hui. Bunny Ball naturally wouldn't let him in to see Hui. But Ryudo had already expected Bunny Ball's current attitude. So he smiled at colored glaze and said, You go in first, I'll be there later. Okay. Although she knew that Bunny Ball wouldn't let her in so easily, but since it was Ryudo who told her to go in, colored glaze didn't hesitate to walk towards the side door, as though she didn't care about this guardian ninja at all. Young mistress, I'm sorry. Let me apologize with my death after this. Seeing that Miss actually wanted to barge into the garden, Bunny Ball could only sigh, and with a wave of his right hand, an almost inaudible long needle flew towards colored glaze's body. As a guardian ninja, Bunny Ball was the best at controlling this kind of special long needle. Through the control of ki and acupuncture points, Bunny Ball could make the human body produce all kinds of miraculous reactions. So if this needle hit, it wouldn't be difficult to make colored glaze faint on the spot. Of course, the prerequisite was that it hit. But just as Bunny Ball's long needle pierced through the air and flew towards Colored Glaze, a small steel ball flew out from the opposite direction like a meteor. It directly shot down the long needle in midair. What? Seeing this scene, Bunny Ball gritted his teeth and tilted his body to the side, swiftly dodging the small steel ball that was flying towards him after the needle was shot down. Bang! Following that, with a loud bang, the small steel bead that was only the size of a fingernail, but was abnormally heavy due to the special material used, smashed into the wall behind Rabbit Ball, and actually punched a small hole in the wall that was visible to the naked eye. What kind of shocking destructive power was this? If it hit a person, the power would be no different from a bullet. Just as Bunny Ball was shocked by the power of the small steel ball and unconsciously dodged, Colored Glaze took the opportunity to run inside, leaving the old butler who was guarding the side door behind her. Colored Glaze's running speed wasn't fast. To Bunny Ball, it was almost the same as a tortoise. If he really wanted to chase, he could definitely catch up. But now it wasn't that Bunny Ball didn't want to chase, but that he couldn't. This was because when Bunny Ball instinctively wanted to block Colored Glaze and prevent her from entering the Imperial Garden, a fierce killing intent had already locked him in place. He couldn't move recklessly, or else he would definitely be attacked, and might even die. In the past 70 years, Bunny Ball had felt this sense of danger countless times. But this time, such a hair-raising sense of crisis was brought to him by a youth who had not even reached the age of 17. Ryuto Kiryu. Amazing. When Bunny Ball finally turned his head to look at Ryuto, the youth who was holding a few small steel balls with a calm expression laughed and said, "You actually dare to make a move on the young miss of your family? There should be a limit to using your seniority, old man Bunny Ball." When he spoke up to hear, Longdo took a deep breath while the tendons and bones in his entire body started trembling like whips, and his aura instantly became a few times stronger than before. At a glance, he seemed like an extremely robust giant. What a strong chi! It was very close to Danjin. No wonder he could kill Ritualist. Sensing Ryuto's powerful chi, that was rapidly connecting to his body, and constantly controlling his muscles to tremble, even Bunny Ball couldn't help but feel a huge pressure. 2 months ago, when Bunny Ball heard that Ryuto had defeated Saito Ritualist in a one-on-one duel, he was actually somewhat in disbelief. After all, Bunny Ball was very clear about Sato's strength, and the two of them had been old rivals for many years. Although Bunny Ball knew that he was stronger than Saito, but at most, he was only slightly stronger. How could a teenager like Ryuto win against Saito Ritualist? At first, Bunny Ball thought that Ryuto had used some tricks or took advantage of Saito Ritualist's perilous state to kill him. However, judging from the aura of a top-notch warrior emanating from Longdo's body, he might not have done those despicable things. Instead, he had openly smashed the demon child into pieces. At least from Bunny Ball's point of view, the current Ryuto was so strong that even he didn't have the confidence to win. Chapter 270. Finally, I can fight with him. Looking at the old man standing in front of him with stern and vigilant eyes, Ryuto was obviously very excited at this time. In theory, he was one of the strongest people in the world. In the original novel, he was described as having combat power that was close to the limit of humans. Although Rabbit Ball's current physical fitness was only LV4 physique, that was mainly because Rabbit Ball was now an old man in his 70s, and his physical ability naturally declined. At his peak, when he was about 40 years old, Rabbit Ball could be said to be a genuine monster. His strength was hard to estimate, and he even had the battle record of taking thousands of lives by himself. Ryuto was naturally very clear about Rabbit Ball's strength. Even when he had just arrived in this world, he had personally felt this man's mountain-like pressure. Just after Ryuto solved the crisis of Colored Glaze's warehouse, in the Kamishiro courtyard, Rabbit Ball, who appeared in front of Ryuto, used his unreasonable strength to teach Ryuto a good lesson, telling him that if he didn't have strength, he would only end up being slaughtered. Although Ryudo successfully used some small tricks to play rabbit ball at that time, and finally extorted an exchange condition, which was a small advantage. However, Longdo would always remember that day. He would always remember that day when he was almost unable to have any descendants. But it was different now. After half a year or so, the current Longdo was no longer the trash who was trembling in fear in the God Generation courtyard. Now he had challenged Iam, fought with the demon child, and raised his middle finger in front of the Kokyo. Whether it was personal strength or experience, he had far exceeded the level he should have at this age. In this way, he already had enough strength to compete with Rabbit Ball, and he already had the confidence to get back at Rabbit Ball. Coincidentally, there was a good opportunity to exchange blows with Rabbit Ball. Before Colored Glaze and Mrs. Ruehue finished discussing, "You stay here with me." Thinking of this, Ryudo's eyes sharpened, and his right hand holding 3 small steel balls waved like lightning, throwing out a few small things in his hand. How much destructive power could a small steel ball have? Sigh, it really is. At this time, Ryudo's passive skill, Hooligan Immortality, had reached 60% proficiency. This proficiency was already very exaggerated. It was almost the level of 20 or 30 years of hard work. This skill combined with Ryudo's strong physique and ki control was enough to turn the thrown miscellaneous objects into a real weapon. In addition, these small steel balls in his hand were bullets deliberately made by Ryudo. Although they looked small, they were all solid steel balls made of the hardest and heaviest steel. The weight was not a joke. "No, I can't take it." Just as the small steel balls in Ryudo's hand flew out, Rabbit Ball's figure disappeared with a whoosh, and then appeared behind Ryudo. Compared to the top powerhouse Saito, who had fought against Ryu Dojo before, Hasamara's tactical system was obviously very different from that of the demon child. Entering Dao mainly relied on a terrifying brute force skill to kill the enemy. After special training, the palm had the power to flatten steel like mud. With one palm, the flesh and bones would be pulverized. There was no way to block it. Rabbit Ball was different. His physical fitness was not as terrifying as entering Dao, nor did he cultivate so many brute force skills. But this old man was ridiculously fast. Yes, fast, too fast. Ryudo was now level 3 insight. Logically speaking, his dynamic vision could not be said to be the best, but it was already quite good. But just as Rabbit Ball dodged the small steel balls and appeared behind Ryudo, Ryudo did not see how he moved or from which angle. Bunny Ball's body looked like a ghost. It was as if he could appear anywhere as light as a feather. This kind of ridiculous speed was an ability that Dragon Fight had never encountered before. But it's okay, I can still react. Just as the old figure suddenly appeared behind Ryudo and swung an attack at him, Ryudo thought he could block Rabbit Ball's attack. But Ryudo was obviously too naive, because Rabbit Ball's attack was several times faster than his movement speed. Shing! For a moment, it was as if the air was neatly cut in half. Rabbit Ball's arm was like a sharp blade stabbing at the back of Ryudo's neck. Because of the speed, the violent sound of the wind breaking could only be heard after the attack. How to describe this feeling? It was like swinging a whip. A whip swung at high speed could reach a speed faster than the speed of sound at the tip. At this moment, Rabbit Ball's hand was like that whip, and the 3 fingers that he clasped together and stabbed at Ryudo were the tip of the whip. At the same time, it was also the fatal tip. Too fast. Rabbit Ball's speed was too fast. It was so fast that even Ryudo could not defend in time. Inner technique Sacrificial Blade. The next moment, the 3 fingers that formed the shape of the character pierced Ryudo's neck from the back, aiming at the vital part of the human body, the medulla oblongata. Once this part was pierced or cut, it could lead to a life-threatening situation. In other words, Rabbit Ball's inner technique, Sacrificial Blade, was aimed at taking a life. Young man, you can only blame yourself for betraying Ruehue-sama. Go to hell and repent. The moment his fingers pierced Ryudo's neck, Rabbit Ball silently said in his heart. The decisive difference between him and Saito, who was a martial Dao grandmaster, was that Rammer wasn't a martial artist. He was actually a ninja who walked in the dark and took people's lives. The inner technique of the ninja was the ultimate assassination technique that was passed down from generation to generation. Every strike was aimed at the vital parts of the body, and there was no consideration for injury or repulsion. And this inner technique sacrificial blade was to swing the arm out like a whip, allowing the fingers to reach a supersonic speed, causing an almost unblockable penetrative damage. In addition, Rabbit Ball was an expert who had cultivated ki to Danjin level. The power of his sacrificial blade was enough to penetrate a steel plate. If it hit a person, even a tough guy who had entered the Tao would have a hole. Therefore, the draconic fighter who was struck by this sacrificial blade from the back should be dead for sure, right? The feeling is not right. So hard. Just when the 3 fingers pierced Ryudo's body and penetrated, Rabbit Ball felt that his fingers had only penetrated about 2 centimeters before they were forcefully stuck. The power of this move was indeed strong, and it did break Ryudo's defense. But this kind of superficial injury was not enough to cause a fatal blow. It was not enough to kill Ryudo. Rabbit Ball could not imagine that a living human's neck could have such exaggerated hardness. It was even harder than a steel plate. Whoosh! The next moment, Ryudo's arm quickly reached back and grabbed Rabbit Ball's right hand at a strange angle. Powerful. Unfortunately, the lethality is a bit low. After grabbing Rabbit Ball's hand, Ryudo slightly turned half of his face and revealed an excited smile to the leader of the Guardian Ninja. The Guardian Ninja was said to be the descendant of the ancient Wind Demon Ninja. They mastered almost all the advanced techniques of the ninja profession. Their speed was as fast as lightning. Their attack was a one-hit kill. Although Rabbit Ball was good at using long needles, he did not need any tools to kill people. 3 fingers were enough to kill people without leaving a trace. The sure kill attack of Rabbit Ball was actually described by Long Do as a little weak. This full marks. But in fact it was not a bluff. After all, Rabbit Ball was facing the extreme Tao master Ryudo Kiryu, who had the strongest defense in the world. With 80% mastery of copper skin and iron bone, LV4 constitution, and chi buffs, Ryu Fight's defense had long since reached a level higher than Sato's. He could even block bullets with his body. In addition, when the sacrificial blade was about to stab him, Ryudo slightly turned his head at the last moment, allowing the needle to stab the trapezius muscle beside his neck. Then he quickly contracted the muscle between his fingers, which was why the medulla oblongata was not directly pierced. Now that Rabbit Ball's attack missed, and his wrist was caught, he would definitely have to pay the price. Dragon Bone Dislocation Hand, Heaven and Earth Inverted. Before Rabbit Ball could even react, his body flew up like a fallen leaf, involuntarily flying out. This flight caused Rabbit Ball to fly in a huge arc from behind Long Do and fly in front of him. Then with lightning speed, Long Do twisted his arm and pressed him to the ground. Because of the skill bone dislocating dragon entangling hands, this series of grabs and grabs could be said to be extremely smooth. In the blink of an eye, Rabbit Ball's old face came into close contact with the ground. Poof! His nose, which was already a little flat, hit the hard floor. Blood spurted out like a blooming flower, dyeing the white floor red. The most important thing was that 2-1 was pressed to the ground by Long Do with his arm bent backward. This kind of posture was usually very difficult to break free from. Gotcha! But in the next second Rabbit Ball, who was pinned to the ground with his arm bent, suddenly dislocated his shoulder joint. He suddenly rolled on the ground at a strange angle, and cleverly broke free from Ryudo's grabbing posture. Good guy. As expected of the original work's strength ceiling, he really didn't take it seriously. Seeing Rabbit Ball stand up and relocate his shoulder joint in the blink of an eye, Ryudo couldn't help but grin. But that's how it should be. Otherwise it wouldn't be interesting. After revealing a happy expression, Ryudo continued to fight with Rabbit Ball at the entrance of the Kamishiro Imperial Garden. The two of them went back and forth. Needles and steel balls flew everywhere. The light and dark forces were the same color. But just as the two of them were happily fighting, the colored glaze finally arrived at Rue Huey's door. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.